I'll declare the meeting open at 6:30. Please stand for the opening prayer, which tonight will be read by Reverend Bob Dennis of Marylands Baptist Church. Thank you.
Please bow with me in prayer. Our God, as we mark the 100 years since the end of World War I on Sunday, we're reminded that war, though sometimes unavoidable, is horrific and does lasting damage. We remember the fallen in all wars. We also pray that we will continue to work towards peace in a world where hate is common. As we make decisions tonight, we pray that they would honour you, be conducive to unity and free of compromise of the values of fairness, justice and compassion. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Please remain standing. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Darug people, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. Please remain standing for the national anthem. Thank you, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Mr. General Manager.
Good evening. Please be advised that the open session of this council meeting will be recorded and will be streamed live on council's website. This recording will also be archived and be made available on council's website. Whilst all care will be taken to maintain the privacy of the public gallery, members of the public may be recorded. Council requests that all members of the public are respectful and use appropriate language. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNulty. Apologies, and I have an application by Councillor Sarkis, a request for leave of absence from the council meeting on the 7th of November 2018 to the 21st of November 2018. I have moved Councillor Addy. Is there a second? Councillor Garrard. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Council, are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Council, well, can I get a move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 17th of October 2018 be confirmed? Councillor Wong moved. Is there a seconded? Councillor Elmore. No discussion. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Council, I have three mayoral minutes, so with your indulgence, I'll start with the first one, and it's Environmental Health Australia Excellent Award. And I am pleased to announce that the staff from Cumberland Council's Environmental Health team have been recognised for their professional achievements by the Environmental Health Australia. At the recent Environmental Health Australia New South Wales Excellence Award, Cumberland Council staff received the following recognition. Ben Cohn was awarded the Trainee Environmental Health Officer of the Year for his contribution to workloads and development as a trainee at Cumberland Council. And Lisa Hughes, former Senior Environmental Health Officer and current Environmental Health Contractor, was awarded the Environmental Health Professional of the Year. This award recognised Lisa's contribution to the field of environmental health and her current mentoring of women in the field of environmental health at Western Sydney University. This is the third time in 4 years that someone associated with Cumberland Council has received this accolade. Brad Sinclair was recognised as a finalist in the Early Career Environmental Health Profession of the Year category. Brad was shortlisted as a finalist for his research into the area of splash parks in public areas. The entire Environmental Health team was recognised as a finalist in the Environmental Health Team of the Year category. The team was shortlisted for their services to the community and businesses in all areas of environmental health, however, in particular for the team's focus on food safety and public health education. These awards demonstrate the great work that Cumberland Council is doing in the area of environmental health. I so move this mayoral minute. Thank you, Councillor Garrard. There's no discussion. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. That'll be up to the General Manager, Councillor Garrard. My second mayoral minute is regarding Parks and Leisure Australia 2018 major event of the year. It's the Sydney Cherry Blossom Festival. And I am very pleased to announce that Cumberland Council has been awarded as the winner of the 2018 Major Event of the Year Award for the Sydney Cherry Blossom Festival at the 2018 Parks and Leisure Australian National Awards of Excellence. This follows the State Award already received early in the year, which enabled Council to progress and compete against other national finalists to be the best of the best in this field. The Sydney Cherry Blossom Festival is now New South Wales' largest horticultural festival held annually in the Auburn Botanic Gardens. And in 2017, the festival achieved a record 50% growth, attracting over 90,000 visitors. And in 2018, the event attracted a further record crowds of almost 100,000 visitors. This event is now a major tourism driver for the Cumberland area, with 70% of the visitors travelling to the festival from outside the council's area. This award demonstrates the great work that Cumberland Council is doing and the wonderful event in our parklands that we are delivering to our community. I so do move the minute. And thank you, Councillor Wong. Again, is there any discussion? No discussion, I'll put it. Councillor Saha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the opportunity to attend the Cherry Blossom Festival with my family and friends on a Sunday afternoon. And I must say the way our staff was managing the event, I was very happy to see, from parking to the different food area to the different attraction. And I think the biggest thing was the managing crowd. So I'd like to thank all the staff who was involved in making our Cherry Blossom Festival a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saha. Councillor Garrard.
Mr. Mayor, I was very impressed by the performance of the staff on that day and of course over the period of the festival, and certainly the number of people that turned up was simply amazing. Very hard to appreciate those sort of numbers in a local environment, but clearly it was happening, and the planning that's gone into it was A-grade. I've been involved with a lot of events over the years, and I think this is as good as I've seen. I'm very impressed. Reading your minute, I noticed we're being nominated for the national award. Well, this is
we have won it.
So that's it.
That's it. Yep.
That's even more satisfying, and I know we can't give everybody a pay rise inside that department either. But if what it does, it puts legs on our event strategy as far as I see. We've put a fair bit of work into that. That document's been out on exhibition and been adopted, and this is right in line with that. So we can, it sets the standard for other things to come. So I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Any further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Finally, Council, I have a mayoral minute with Remembrance Day 2018 marks the 100th anniversary of Armistice, and I would like to note the importance of the upcoming Remembrance Day this Sunday. Sunday the 11th of November has a special significance as it marks the 100th anniversary of Armistice, which then ended the First World War, 1914 to 1918. 100 years ago, on the 11th of November 1918, the guns on the Western Front fell silent after 4 years of continuous warfare. Originally known as Armistice Day, Remembrance Day commemorates the signing of the peace agreement between Germany and the Allies that ended the war. Wreath laying ceremonies are held around the country at 11 a.m. on Remembrance Day, and at 11 a.m. on the day, a 1-minute silence is observed in the memory of those who served. This Sunday, the 11th of November at 11 a.m, there will be a number of memorial services held in Cumberland Council area, to which the entire community is invited. Cumberland Council has been working with our local RSL sub-branches on memorial services which will be held at Lidcombe and Maryland's Remembrance Parks and Auburn and Granville Memorial Parks. A lone pine tree will be planted at the Maryland's, Granville and Auburn ceremonies. Information on these events is on Council's website and Facebook page. I commend these services to you all. If you cannot attend the service, take a minute at 11 a.m. on Sunday to remember those who served and those we have lost. Linwood House is also holding their open day on Sunday, which includes a World War I photographic display, as well as wonderful markets and a vintage car display. A minute's silence will be held at 11 a.m. A wonderful new book, The Prospect and Sherwood Soldiers Memorial, has also been released by Holroyd Local History Research, and I encourage you to read the stories of the 51 local servicemen whose names are inscribed on the World War I Memorial in Remembrance Park, Maryland. The book can be purchased from Holroyd Local Historical Research Group, and Council will also make copies available in our libraries. And just for the benefit of Council, I have one copy here. Each serviceman is at least afforded one page, if not two. So it's very well researched, and I commend both Dorothy Warwick and the deceased Pat O'Brien, who contributed greatly to that. And I will mark that Councillor Elmore is the grandson of an Anzac veteran, as I am the grandson of a Western Front veteran. So I'd like to so move. Well, thank you, Councillor Moore. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Council, we invite the Auditor to present in relation of item C11/18-215, the annual report.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Samaya Ahmed from the Audit Office of New South Wales, the Director of Financial Audit Services, and this is Mark Upcroft, the partner from PwC. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to provide us, to be able to present the report on the audit today. And I'd also like to thank Richard and his finance team for working with us so closely to achieve a successful and timely audit. Tonight, we plan to take you through the results of our audit and a high-level snapshot of your Council's performance against industry benchmarks. It's very pleasing to see Cumberland Council going through a lot of development and transformation, and the amalgamation has brought with it new opportunities for your Council, but it also brings on some risks. In this significant period of change, what's important is to have a strong control and governance framework, as well as a strong financial reporting process. Our role as the auditors is to provide you that independent assurance over those financial reporting processes, as well as the controls and governance. The Audit Office can also help with sharing some of our learnings across the sector in terms of key findings and best practice in other councils and sharing that with you, as well as our knowledge of public sector auditing and accounting. The Audit Office also provides performance audit reports. This year, we tabled our first local government sector report to Parliament in April of this year. And we had a lot of consistent themes coming across for the entire sector, which can be used for all councils. We also produced a short video, which is on our website, which highlights some of the key findings, and a data visualization tool, which allows your council to compare and benchmark yourselves against other councils. In addition to that, we had 3 performance audit reports tabled for this particular sector. We covered council reporting on service delivery, fraud controls in local government, and shared services in local government. A copy of these reports can be found on our Audit Office website. As you can see from the papers today, we have completed our audit, and I'm pleased to report that I have issued a clean opinion on all the financial statements and the special schedules. This means that we are happy with the financial statements and there were no material issues. I'll pass over to Mark now to just take you through some of the specifics of the financial audit.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So what I'll briefly do is comment on Council's operating performance for the period, including a couple of performance ratios that are also in the financial statements. In terms of operating performance, Council achieved a surplus of $21 million, slightly lower than the $38 million recorded in the previous year. I guess it's important right up front to note that this is Cumberland Council's second financial year or financial reporting period since it was formed in May 2016. And really the most relevant part of that is that the comparative period in this year's financial statements is not the same length of time. So we're comparing a year to 13 and a half months. And that does have an impact when looking at the financial indicators period to period. So that result I mentioned also includes capital grants and contributions. When you exclude capital grants and contributions, the result was a deficit of $8.4 million compared to a deficit of $4.1 million in the previous period. And just in terms of the breakdown of that, that result includes rates revenue of $88 million, around about 5% higher than the previous period. Annual charges revenue, however, was lower, and that's mainly due to the waste refund that Council made during the year of $7.6 million. That result also included just under $54 million of grants and contributions revenue, and that was about 45% lower than the previous financial reporting period. It was also, and that's partly the impact of the shorter financial period, as I mentioned, but also a couple of one-off grants that were awarded to Council in the first year, financial year 2017, relating to the new Council Implementation Fund grant and Stronger Community Capital Grant, as well as some additional receipts from the federal government in financial assistance grant funding. Importantly, operating expenses were also lower this year by around about $20 million. At 30 June 2018, Council's cash and investments position was $142 million. Now, it's important to understand the breakdown of that. So of that amount, $66.6 million is subject to external restrictions, which reflects the purpose of the funding that's been provided to Council. In this case, mainly developer contributions. A further $43.5 million is subject to internal restrictions, which is Council's funding of specific programs and activities. And that leaves $31.2 million of unrestricted funds, which is essentially a head start on general Council activities funding for the coming year. All New South Wales councils are required to report on certain financial performance ratios, and these are disclosed in the financial statements at note 23, and I'll comment on a couple of them. Firstly, the operating performance ratio, and this is a measure of how well Council's operating revenue is sufficient to meet operating expenditure when you exclude capital grants and contributions. And the benchmark set by the Office of Local Government for this ratio is a break-even position. And Council achieved a negative 5.25% ratio. And it's fair to say that there was a big impact on that ratio from the waste refund this year. The next ratio is the own source operating revenue ratio. which measures the extent of council's reliance on external funding in the form of grants and contributions. The ratio achieved by council was higher than the Office of Local Government benchmark of 60%, with a ratio of nearly 74%. In terms of the unrestricted current ratio, this is essentially a liquidity measure that looks at council's ability to meet short-term obligations, and the minimum ratio that's set by the Office of Local Government is 1.5 times, and council achieved a ratio of 4.3 times, and notably an improvement from the previous year as well. And finally, the debt service ratio of 11.2 times, which is a lot higher than the minimum benchmark of 2 times. So I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate council on another successful year, your second financial reporting period. And through you, Mr. Mayor, we would invite questions in relation to the audit process.
Thank you, Mr. Upcroft. Are there any questions of Ms. Hamid or Mr. Upcroft? Councillor Saha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just a question. How does your planned scope of audit, which you conducted this year, differ from the previous year?
Well, our scope of the audit is quite similar each year. We have certain auditing requirements as per the standards. So we are required to look at the material areas for the audit. We are required to look at some controls, internal controls, and do some testing around that, as well as this substantive audit work. So the scope is quite similar, with key high risk areas that we look at in more detail, as opposed to some of the lower risk areas. Yeah.
So what about sampling? Do you use different sampling, or that's also very static?
Yes, we do use different sampling. So depending on the risk area of particular financial statement items, we will then have different risk rating, and then we will have different levels of sampling. So if something's a low risk, we'll have lower sampling, as opposed to high risk areas where we'll have a lot more sampling work to do.
Is there any unresolved item or matter which was raised in last year audit still has not been addressed?
No, the finance team has worked quite hard to resolve the issues and taking actions in relation to each of the areas we've raised. It's always a continuous improvement, and there are matters that we recommend to continue improving. But overall, as I said, it is a clean audit opinion, so we are comfortable with the financial statements, and there were no major issues or material issues.
You also mentioned that our financial statement was benchmarked against other councils. May I ask what would be the other councils?
No, what I mentioned was that we have a data visualization tool on our Audit Office website, which has the results of all councils, so all local councils across New South Wales. So if you wanted to, you can go onto our website and pick any council you want to benchmark yourself. So if you wanted to compare yourself to any particular council, you can actually have a look at different areas and see how you're travelling against other councils.
Thank you. That ends my question.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Elmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got one question. As we're discovering, I like ratios, and as we're discovering in this council, we've got a high number of refugee people and a high number of homeless people, and this council probably needs to provide services that are probably a little unique in that way. I'm just wondering if you people have got a ratio of different councils, how much they spend on services, because I'll be interested to know.
We don't actually comment on that particular aspect. Again, if it's publicly available information, you could look at the information to benchmark, but we don't actually look at it at that level in terms of the specific services, and then looking at benchmarking against each council. Did you want to add anything else?
Thank you, Councillor Elmore. Are there any more questions? No more questions. Well, thank you, Ms. Hamid and Mr. Upcroft. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, I'd like to get a move for suspension for the public forum questions. Moved Councillor Sarr, seconded Councillor Wong. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Council, I have 4 speakers, and the first speaker is on item C11/18-216, the Carlton Street, Granville, proposed no parking police accepted signage. Superintendent Darryl Jobson, could you please come to the rostrum, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to address in relation to what's before you tonight. And what's before you tonight is an interim arrangement to increase some police accepted parking on Carlton Street. And that comes about due to a recent move at the weekend to move general duties staff from Marylands to Granville Police Station for operational reasons. I might add though, Mr Mayor, that both Marylands and Granville police stations remain operational on a 24/7 basis and are staffed by general duty staff, so there's no concern in relation to our operating environment. Having said that, with that movement of operation response across to Granville, it means that we have a greater fleet which we have to cater for, and we are working with council in relation to a more permanent solution in relation to that parking. But in the interim, we'd seek, and I commend to you the recommendation for council to approve 2 additional spots in Carlton Street on a temporary basis, whilst we work with council to address that issue on a more permanent basis. And if all goes well, as I anticipate it will, the intent is to get parking off Carlton Street in the longer term, which will no doubt free up the passage of traffic in Carlton Street and resolve some issues in that area, particularly at the peak times.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions? Councillor Rami.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, to the relevant officer. I know a motion was moved in late last year about clearing that lane for peak hours. So can you just refresh how that correlates with this, or are they related, are they unrelated? Has our motion hindered?
Mr McNulty.
I have read it actually, but it's not very clear in the report. So please save your comments to yourself.
The resolution that was passed actually called for clearways to be introduced on Carlton Street in the AM and PM peaks.
Yeah.
And the Superintendent Jobson and his staff raised us the difficulties that would cause them, and not from an operational sense, particularly with the change that Superintendent Jobson just referred to, where their first response teams have all moved to Granville. So we're seeking to implement a temporary arrangement which would be contrary to the previous resolution, so we need to change that resolution.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rami. Councillor Addy, you have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, through you. Commander, thank you for coming and giving us a good speech. Just a question. Can we assist you in any way in actually having some parking right next to the library in that little parking section, like the first 3 or 4 spots? Or is that still too far away from your operations?
Yeah, there are 2 options that are on the table for consideration. Our main concern is response times for those, what we call those priority jobs, where we need to get into the vehicles as quickly as we can to respond to those calls for service. Invariably, we exit via the front of Granville Police Station, and access as close to the front of the station would be an absolute priority to ensure that we can get to those jobs as quickly as we can, as you would appreciate.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr Mayor, can I also ask a question? Is it time to ask questions of the officers now? We'll wait for the report. Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Grove, you have a question?
Yes, I've skimmed the report. I'll fess up, haven't read it. It says the report suggests a amount of time as a temporary arrangement. Just wanted confirmation. How long would you be proposing or support an interim solution for?
We need to work with council on that, but I'm confident we will come to a resolution. I can't put a time on it. I won't speculate on that, but I would sincerely hope that would be well within that 6-month period. I would seek to have that resolved as soon as next week, if we're able to have a plan in place for a more permanent basis of the parking.
Thank you, Councillor Grave. Councillor Hamid, do you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions, but they've been answered. By way of comment, thank you so much, Darryl, for coming along tonight. Your officers do an incredible job, and it would absolutely dishearten me if we couldn't all agree that this is an important thing, that we support the police because the police are supporting our residents in our community. So thank you for coming along today, and I wholeheartedly support your request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamid. Any further questions? No, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors.
I have 3 speakers on item C11/18, 222, notice of motion for the donation to the Bartine Madai Hindu Temple, Regent's Park. Dr Singh, would you like to come to the rostrum, please? Dr Singh, you'll have 3 minutes to address council, and if you could please stay there if there's any questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'm Dr. Yadu Singh, President of Federation of Indian Associations of New South Wales. Today is Diwali, one of the most sacred events for Hindu communities. Hindu families will be celebrating Diwali tonight with their families at home. Most of us, particularly from my community, Indian Australian community, were sad when we heard about the vandalism and attack on Bharatiya Mandir, Hindu temple in Regent's Park on 14th October, leading to desecration of idols and damage to the temple. I wrote a blog post and posted on social media, which was seen by thousands of people with overwhelming response of sadness. They all could not believe, how can this happen in this beautiful country? It was unfortunate, and of course it was unacceptable. While the police will do its job, the temple management is faced with a huge bill to get the temple to stand on its feet again. The reality is, however, that it doesn't have resources to find this money without support from the community at all. Bharatiya Mandir falls under the Cumberland Council local government area, which has a reputation to have caring, responsive, and good-hearted staff and councillors right here. While few from our community, including I, will be hosting a fundraising event on 16th November to raise some money, and we have a campaign, GoFundMe, which will hopefully bring us some thousands, but we do need support from others as well. And we know without this support, the fund we will generate will not be enough. We are exploring every possibility to raise money here. It is our hope and request to the council to chip in with some monetary support. As you know, one of the goals of the council is to encourage and support a diverse, welcoming, and inclusive neighborhood. Helping the temple will be one of the criteria which will fulfill your goals, councillors. Money for the support can come from various sources, mayoral fund and the grant program, but we request that this money should come now, not in a few months' time, because the temple is not operating, and we want this temple to start operating now, soon, not in a few months' time. Thank you very much, honorable councillors, that you voted to support our farmers by putting some money for them just recently. Some support from the temple from the council will also be an entirely justifiable and well-deserved action. Our community is waiting for a positive outcome from Cumberland Council and you, sirs, tonight. Let this be the Diwali gift to Bharatiya Mandir and to our community from the council tonight. Bharatiya Mandir Hindu Temple should receive fair go from everybody, including Cumberland Council. Thank you. Happy Diwali.
Thank you, Doctor. Are there any questions of Dr Singh?
Speaker
No, there's another 2, Councillor Grove.
I'll hold my peace. No.
Thank you. Councillor Hamid.
Dr Singh, I just want to wish you a very happy Diwali with a victory of knowledge over ignorance, good over evil, and light over darkness. I attended an event on the weekend. It was a Diwali event in Horwood Gardens, and it was absolutely fabulous. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for coming along today, and happy Diwali.
Thank you very much, and happy Diwali to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Dr Singh.
Thank you.
Mr. Pandit Paras Ram Maharaja.
Thank you, Your Worship Mayor, the councillors. I am the head priest of Bharatiya Mandir. Our temple started in 1994, which was old church we purchased, and we didn't change any sign in that. We kept the church symbol as it was because we respect every religion. Unfortunately, on the 14th of October, as you know, what has happened. But at this stage, our community relies on support from Your Worship and the councillors, as we don't have any avenue to restart the church again. Today, as I speak, as we all know, today is the darkest night of the year. And in this night, all houses of Indians who are celebrating Diwali, they celebrate with lights. Unfortunately, the church, the temple is in darkness. I need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Garrard?
Did the organisation have the insurance?
We do have building insurance, but we couldn't afford to have contents insurance. So there was no contents insurance.
Has the organisation provided any paperwork to the council in terms of what they would do with any money that was given to council?
I think I might pass that to Mr. Endicott.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't have a breakdown as such. However, that could be a requirement if council was to provide any funding as per our other grants arrangements. We have looked up the incorporation and the ABN lookup of the organisation and have validated that they are a not-for-profit incorporated association.
And I understand then that the premises was covered for insurance, but contents not.
The building is covered with insurance, but the contents is not. And unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to have contents insurance, nor we had any resources to have alarm and CCTV. Because we didn't expect something of this nature will ever occur in this civilized community.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Coomer? Thank you, Ms. Coomer.
Thank you. Good evening, the Honourable Mayor and Councillors of Cumberland Council. My name is Dr. Shivani Kumar, and I'm a devotee from Bharatiya Mandir. Bharatiya Mandir is a small Hindu temple located in Regent's Park, which has over 300 devotees and friends of the temple from all over the world. It was established in 1994 after many years of fundraising. Our community comes together every Friday for prayers, and we hold 7 to 10 day celebrations during the Hindu festivals. At this time, we also provide free meals to the community. This space gives our members the opportunity to come together for a common peaceful cause and allows us to socialize with like-minded people. This is an open space, and we invite everyone who is interested in the Indian culture. However, on the evening of Sunday 14th October 2018, Bharatiya Mandir Sydney was vandalized. All the statues and pictures of our God were smashed into pieces and left all over the temple. The musical instruments were covered in paint and slashed, leaving them unsalvageable. There were areas charred from fires that the perpetrators had lit. The carpet was wet from the hose they used to flood the temple. Prayer supplies were opened and thrown all over the place. There was unimaginable destruction left in our sacred place of worship that left many of our devotees in a state of shock, some even in tears. As a result of this damage, we can no longer conduct prayers in the temple as it poses a safety risk to our members. There is a lot of work ahead of us to restore it to a reasonable state for our devotees. The damage is estimated to be upwards of $50,000. Tonight is the most auspicious day in the Hindu calendar, Diwali, also known as the Festival of Lights. Around the world, all Hindus are celebrating by lighting candles, lamps, and sparklers. However, our temple is dark. We are unable to have celebrations there because it is in a non-operational state. In order for our temple to be open again, we need to install carpet, costing about $8,000. We need CCTV and alarm systems to ensure the safety of our members and temple, costing about $5,000. As you may also know, we don't have contents insurance, which will cost us approximately $3,000. We desperately need your help to get our temple in working condition. On behalf of Bharatiya Mandir Executive Committee and our devotees, we would like to thank the Mayor of Cumberland Council, Greg Cummings, Councillor Suman Saha, and all the councillors here tonight for your ongoing support, especially with the clean-up process and for installing temporary CCTV in the area. We look forward to working with you in the future, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight.
My apologies, Dr. Kumar.
That's okay.
Are there any questions of Dr. Kumar? Councillor Hamid?
Shivani, thank you so much for coming along tonight. When I heard of this act of violence, I was absolutely gutted, and I just wanted to extend my absolute support for the temple, because I think that an attack on the Hindu community is an attack on every single one of us. Is an attack on every community, is an attack on the Muslim community, the Christian community, and in fact any community of faith. And so I stand in racial solidarity with you and your community and your temple, but I do want to say that contents insurance, if we can learn anything from this, contents insurance is a very, very important thing, and I hope that the temple does go down that path. So
Yeah,
thank
we
you for
definitely
coming
will be.
on.
Thank you so much
Pleasure.
for your support.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Councillor Hamid. No further questions? Councillor Garrard.
I remember very well when St Patrick's Cathedral of Parramatta got totally destroyed by a fire, and the great number of public functions that were held to raise money to repair that place or rebuild it. You say you had 300 members from all over the world. How many are from Regent's Park?
So we have approximately 50 regular devotees that come. Is that correct? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Any further questions? No further? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Council, can I have a motion for resumption? Moved Councillor Addy, seconded, I think it was Councillor Grove. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Councillor, because we've had speakers on two items, I intend to bring those two items forward before asking for other items by exception. So, Council, if we could go to item C11/18-216, which is the Colton Street Granville proposed no parking police acceptance signage. For those of you who have hard copy, page 361. Councillor Grove.
Gerald, I'm assuming, responsible for this space. One of the fun things I like to do after council meetings, not in this council, but, maybe another council, we might not name them, is you go through the minutes of a council meeting and try and reconcile what you want, what the councillors want, and what the minutes actually say, and read according to the weather. The concern that I have with the minutes of the traffic committee meeting is the recommendations within them endorse particular layouts, but I can't find, and perhaps it's only because I've just skimmed it, I'm happy to plead guilty that I didn't read a report about a traffic issue in Granville, but is there anything there which binds council to that 6-month interim solution period? Is there anything in the resolution of that meeting or the recommendation where you can guarantee to me that if the problem isn't solved after 6 months, we'll either have a report come back to the council, or you'll have people out there taking the signs back down and putting new ones up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Fitzgerald.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, the current recommendation before us doesn't bind us to the 6 month time frame. The background of this is that this matter was moved off the floor by council after receiving the traffic committee minutes. Council staff investigated it and reported it to a subsequent traffic committee meeting. That report came back to council. The resolution was amended again off the floor, and we find ourselves in the position that we are today. Following the introduction of the second resolution, the amended resolution, council staff started to implement that resolution, and we received advice from the Cumberland Police Area Command during the consultation process that this wasn't going to help their cause. So that's the full background of the whole process. So in summary, there is nothing that binds us to 6 months.
Okay.
Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Christou.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've been reading this report. I think it's important that council respect and work with the police. However, I'm also very disappointed because council wouldn't be in this position if there weren't a merged command and funding cuts to the police. Now that's what's created this mess, and we're the ones lumped with it. So I think it's important we do go through and follow through with it, and that definitely the police have my backing. This is not a creation of their own, but I do want to emphasise that we were left with what's there today and the extra parking spaces needed after being dumped with the mess that the state government created for us.
Well, before I continue with the discussion, I haven't a motion.
Ask a question, so I'm going to move the motion.
Okay, Councillor Addy.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
Honestly, I can't see how the state government caused an issue with regards to parking in the street because of merging people, because those parking spots have always been there ever since the police station was there. However, questions through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Fitzgerald. The police station is actually set back quite a fair distance from the front of the street.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Yeah.
And in the imminent future, we will have a very luxurious 2.5 story building across the other side, which will encompass the new library. So the library will become redundant, technically speaking, of which the library does have some space in front. From your professional opinion, from a roads perspective, is there any way of putting in a slip lane in front of those two buildings so the police can park, and then at the same time still help us have 2 lanes clear for traffic all the way through?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the 2 options that we're currently canvassing at the moment as far as a permanent solution goes.
Right.
We're looking at parking at the front of the building for the police force, and we're also looking at parking at the rear of the building and making the required adjustments to make sure that the police can operate satisfactorily.
I think the rear, from what the commander said, the rear is not exactly a good option for them, because if they've got a car park there anyway, we have car parking as well, so getting to the car is where the issue is.
Yeah. No.
But it is feasible to actually have a slip lane in there.
It could potentially fit. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, it can fit. It's just a matter of how it's going to operate, which is some of the final adjustments that
Mr.
we'll make.
Mayor, I move to adopt the recommendation.
Well, first of all, I've got Councillor Addy, seconded Councillor Zareka. And I'll go to Councillor Grove. You'll have an amendment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would take the recommendation as it reads, replace the full stop with a comma, then add the words for a period of 6 months, drop another comma, and that a report be presented to council canvassing a long-term solution for police parking in Granville. So I want to lock that in to the actual resolution.
I understand your...
and I'll speak to that when given the opportunity.
Well, first of all, I'll ask the mover and the seconder whether they're willing to accept those...
An issue with that. Councillor Grab, just clarify about the 6 months. Is that for the entire lot or for the additional 2 parking spots that the commander was referring to?
The changes to the layout. So once again, it's a case of where we've got an interim solution. Before we make this interim solution a permanent solution, we revisit the whole issue. And if we need to advocate to the state government that we need more parking, different parking, solution that requires capital funding, we can advocate for that. In the meantime, we want to make sure the local area command is functional. At the end of the day, it's not that, we appreciate the work of our police, but we don't want them bogged down advocating within their own for an investment or a change to a parking solution. That's really our job. We need to get into that space. We need to provide support to them. As an interim solution, we need to proceed with what's recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have an issue with that.
Nor do I, no, that's fine.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak further, Councillor Grove?
Only if we've got 5 minutes to kill.
No, we don't. Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further discussion?
I just suggest to Councillor Grove that rather than say for a period of 6 months, let's say for a period up to 6 months, because we might get a report a lot earlier than that. Yeah.
Councillor Addy, you accept that?
Mr. Mayor, I do accept it, but I honestly don't have faith in us getting anything before 6 or 9 months even.
We'll see how that. Councillor Zarek?
No problem.
Thank you.
One issue, Mr. Mayor, if I may. We normally stand up when we speak, I think.
Councillor Addy.
Mr. Mayor, the only issue with this motion is that we haven't asked the commander if he's okay with it as well, because it's really his issue that's going to be affected by this. So is there an issue with, through you, Mr. Mayor, can we ask the commander to come and say he's okay with the 6 month period, etc., etc.?
I believe, and Mr. Fitzgerald might be able to enlighten us rather to go into suspension and come back out, but I believe that the council officers have been working with the police. There has been site inspections. They have come up with ideas, but if Mr. Fitzgerald would like to continue.
Mr. Mayor, just very briefly through you, we've also canvassed this as part of a digital traffic committee meeting, which an email has been circulated to all members of the committee, and they've all given their concurrence. So we're all in concurrence that this is the way forward.
There's no issue. You can nod, you have to speak, we won't get into suspension. Okay, Mr. Mayor, it's okay, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Addy. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion?
Other than a flag, I think this is a good discipline, because if 6 months goes by, we can't come up with a solution. I'm happy to extend it for another 6 months, but I want this to stay on the agenda until we agree to a final outcome.
Councillor Grove, that closes debate. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. Council, we'll move on to the next item that we had 3 speakers on, and that was C11/18-222, and that's page 571. So just before we launch into it, let me get there. Well, I think we, as we normally do with notices of motions, I will call on Councillor Saha, who has put forward this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. Yes, I want to move the motion. You already...
Before you begin, Councillor Saha, I'll ask for a second. I'm sorry, Councillor Wong, I don't have it on the paper. It is correct. My apologies, Councillor Zada. If that's the case, I will stick to custom and practice. And Councillor Wong, you wish to second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Please continue, Councillor Saha.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. You already heard a lot about this, so I'm not going to go into much details. But on Sunday, 14th of October, the Varthiya Mandir Hindu Temple in Visions Park suffered a cowardly attack. The nature and scale of vandalism and damage has not only destroyed this place of worship, but also left the local Hindu community in a state of shock and anguish. And I'd like to thank Mr. Mayor, you, because I give a call to you on Thursday afternoon, and you are going to sit here, remember, but you say I will drop by. So if you remember, you came there, and if you remember the level of destruction we have seen inside the temple, I cannot believe that someone in the present world can do that sort of vandalism inside a place of worship. I also like to acknowledge that some other councillors, like I know Councillor George Campbell, Councillor Huang, Councillor Glenn and Mora, maybe some of my other councillor colleagues had the opportunity to visit the temple as well, and you will definitely agree with me. Now, I know when we talk about donation to anyone, we'll be talking about a practice and processes we have. And I think it would be better if this temple group can actually apply for an infrastructure grant application through council. But it is an irony because the attack happened on 14th of October. We were there on 18th of October. Council staff, I'd like to thank the council staff as well, including the general manager, Hamish McNulty, Brooke Endicott, and also Peter Fitzgerald, because they are the one helped them installing CCTV camera, temporary CCTV camera, and also helped them with cleaning up the rubbish. And that was on 19th October, Friday. But we didn't have enough time for the temple group so that they can put a grant application for the infrastructure grant funding, because the grant application actually closed on 22nd of October. But this temple group is not only coming to us and asking for our support, they are also trying their best level. They have launched a GoFundMe campaign online, and as of now, I just checked, just right now I checked, they have raised $6,507. They are also organizing a fundraising event on 16th of November, and they need support for their fundraising event. Let me tell you, as of last night, no one actually have paid for that fundraising events. So, not everyone in our community has the same capacity and capability. Not everyone has the same privilege. The truth is that we have many cultures, faith group in our community, and that is probably our diversity. We celebrate each other cultures, we also help each other. That way, we become one community, and we are a Cumberland community. Today is a very special day. It's actually Diwali. I should be celebrating with my family at home, and then would be going to temple. Maybe not, if not Bharatiya temple, then other temple in Cumberland. But the Bharatiya Mandir people are not celebrating Diwali tonight. They are here. They are seeking our help. They could not celebrate Navratri as well. That was another biggest Hindu festival, because the attack happened actually in the time when the Hindu community celebrate Navratri. Deepavali or Diwali actually means rose of lamp. It is festival of lights. It symbolizes victory of light over darkness and good over evil. Bharatiya Mandir need our support, dear councillor and mayor, so they can be in operation soon. They could not celebrate Navratri, they are not celebrating Diwali tonight. But let's help them so that they can hold the next religious festival in their temple. A couple of other things.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Christou. Second, Councillor Rami. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried.
I think it's been mentioned that this is a small community temple and they have around 300 member based. The member come from all over Sydney. And in an evening, I just want to clarify that, because if we want to ask how many of them are from Cumberland, that's really hard to say. But I think the speaker mentioned that in an evening, roughly they had 50 devotees who normally come to the temple for the evening prayer. Dear Mayor and Councillor, I request all your support for the Bharatiya Mandir. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saha. I have Councillor Addy, then Councillor Campbell, then Councillor Wong, then Councillor Zeta, then Councillor Grove. Councillor Addy, are you speaking in favour of the motion or against?
A bit of both.
All right, I'll try and ascertain that as you speak. Thank you, Councillor Addy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, look, I really do have an issue with this motion. It has nothing to do with Dr. Yadul Singh's speech, by the way. He's been away from our LGA for a long time. He's been spending too much time over that side in Parramatta instead of coming and talk to us. However, the issue I have with this motion is it's not enough. That's why I'm speaking against it. I actually would like to move an amendment to actually increase the amount to $15,000 because the amounts that they're actually going to go through were estimated at 50, but I believe that it's actually going to be closer to $75,000 to get this temple back up and running properly as to how it was. So and I don't want to move an amendment actually, I'd ask Mr. Councillor Saar if he'd like to ascertain increasing it to $15,000 because I believe they deserve not 15 but more, but however, we don't want to go overboard to the point where we don't have the funds necessarily available for it. So if Councillor Saar is okay with this, I'd like to move and increase it. And that's my part about supporting
Councillor Saar, do you? Can I ask a question? Certainly, Councillor Wong.
So, Councillor Addy, it seems like you always mysteriously know the amount of the figure, even though when the temple representative was saying up to 50,000. Can I ask, where did you get the up to $70,000 figure from?
For you, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Addy, yeah, if you wish to answer it, it's up to you.
I stand as I usually do, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's a very weird question to ask because as we all know, people estimate things and they believe what the actual costs are. Being in the construction industry now for probably close to 29 years, I made my own assessments and I saw what actually it cost to get things done. I did go past the temple. I visited the temple probably about somewhere a few years back when I was a much younger and much smaller scope of size back in the Auburn days. But however, I did go past and have a look and yes, it is going to cost a lot more than 50,000 to fix. The building insurance aspect is not really the problem because it's not really the building that's been destroyed. It's more the contents internally and all the artifacts they have to bring in. I mean, for example, the drums that they have in that temple were specifically made overseas to bring in. Those alone will cost a few $1,000s just to bring back. So the cost will be a lot more. So that's why I want to increase the amount to $15,000.
Answer your question, Councillor Wong?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Saha, do you accept that?
Mr. Mayor, if you allow me, yes, I do. I want to request, I want to put a little bit of amendment to that. Yes, we can increase the donation up to $15,000. And I'll be saying that if the temple actually used that fund, the extra fund, to have the content insurance. Yep. And the alarm.
Add that?
Yes.
But you're willing to, just so I'm clear, you're willing to accept the increase?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have an issue with that. It's not my motion anyway, so I don't know if ask him.
No, I'm not. I just want to clarify. Councillor Wong, as the seconder, you accept the increase. So, so you want to make an extra to your motion, Councillor Saha,
That's
which
right,
is?
a donation of $15,000, and the way council makes sure that the Bharatiya Mandir Temple Group utilize this fund to purchase the content insurance.
Some of them.
Content insurance and also install a CCTV camera and back-to-base alarm system.
Well, there might be more than.
It's very prescriptive. Could we say that they explore and then report back to council on the possibility of that?
I think, may I request some suggestion probably from the general manager of our Brook on that?
Who would like to?
I mean, the reason I'm asking, Mr. Mayor, is to make sure that the funds being spent.
I don't want to put parameters on that are unachievable, Councillor Saha. So I'm very mindful of being too prescriptive.
Some of those funds be.
Councillor Mr. McNally.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps we could word the resolution that council request that these funds be allocated towards the purchase of content insurance, CCTV and security system, and that an agreement on these terms be negotiated with the temple.
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't agree with that. I'll explain to you why. Why don't we make it 20? The issue is you can't allocate all these funds for those 3 items.
You're right. I think let's keep it simple. I think can we say that some of the funds can be
It's some of these funds.
some of these funds.
Be allocated to include the purchase, that's it.
Yep, some of the.
We clear on the motion?
Yes, some of the.
We comfortable? Thank you. I have Councillor Campbell, then Councillor Zeta, then Councillor Grave, then Councillor Garrard. Councillor Campbell, you speaking for the motion?
For the motion.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Campbell.
Councillor Saha rang me and told me about this because it's in my ward, and I went around there and met him. Walked into the temple, and the site was a real shock. I felt sick in the stomach, to tell you the truth. It was an awful sight to see something of such great value to a section of the community vandalised in that manner. And I must say that I felt a sense of shame that could happen in our community. And I felt that it wasn't just an attack on the temple and the temple community. We're a multicultural community, and one which has various parts, which, if I can quote the Auburn Council motto, one community, many cultures, and I think that sums us up very well. Why not? So I think that an attack like that was an attack on all of us. It was an attack on our community. It was an attack on the values of our community. So it's very appropriate that Cumberland Council, as the representative of the community, gives a response on behalf of the community to this. It's appropriate that we demonstrate our support for the temple and these people who are under attack, and to assist them to get back on their feet with financial assistance. Like some other people who have spoken tonight, I would urge contents insurance. That's now built into the motion, and there's money available to assist it. But I think we also have to send a message to the rest of the community that council can't bail out everyone whenever there's an attack of vandalism. I wouldn't want this to be seen as a precedent which is going to be applied whenever something of value in the community gets attacked. Well, you look at each case on its merits, and I think in this particular case what we've seen is a very small organisation which does not have the resources to rebuild what they had, and because they are part, as I said, part of our multicultural community, and all parts of the community have to help all other parts. It is most appropriate in this case that we provide this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Zeta, are you speaking for the motion?
I've got some questions.
Thank you.
I haven't spoken yet. No.
I've got Councillor Zeta, then Councillor Grave, then yourself, Councillor Garrard, then Councillor Wong.
I know, but you said thank you, Councillor Garrard.
I'm glad you're paying attention, Councillor Garrard.
You just got downgraded, that's all.
My questions
Councillor Zeta, thank you.
My questions are primarily in respect of how the funding will be sourced. Based on my reading, the actual motion, the comments put forward by staff, it was mentioned that the Mayor could potentially provide $5,000 from his fund, and the additional, well, $10,000 now will need to come from other sources. Our grants at the moment aren't available because it's just been recently closed. Do we have the ability to, I suppose, prepay the grant subject to a future application? Once the third tranche opens up, or would this have to potentially come out of operating revenue?
Ms. Endicott.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what is outlined in the officer response is that we would look to take 5,000. There's 27,000 remaining in the mayoral fund. There's also money remaining in round 2 and round 3 of the community grants program. What we're saying is this is a circumstance that it operates outside or beyond the grants program. What we have identified as a funding source is round 3. Round 2 has closed and staff are assessing at the moment. Round 3 has a substantial amount of money. We would have to reduce the amount of money available through the grants program. So we're not allocating it, but that's our funding source. So we would propose to take, if it was to go to 15, to take 10 from round 3 and reduce the funding pool available via the program.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Zada. Councillor Grove.
Yeah, is that? I come back to the Act, and this is where I have, among other concerns, this is where I have the biggest concern, because the amendments to the Local Government Act really strap down council's capacity to dispense charity, to dispense donations, to dispense ratepayer funds without having an existing plan or existing program with which to do that. The Mayoral Charity Relief program is one such program, but it's capped at $5,000. On what basis would it be legal for us to earmark, prior to consideration of the round 3 grants, a grant recipient in order to make that happen?
I will hand over to Ms Endicott, but I believe we're looking at section 356 of the Local Government Act. Ms Endicott.
Through you, Mr Mayor, council doesn't have a broader donations program. We have the Cumberland Mayoral Community Fund and we have the Community Grants Program. Both of those funds have guidelines that set forth how we assess and recommend to council. However, for the Community Grants Program, all decisions are made by a resolution of council. Under section 356 of the Local Government Act, if you have a look, section 1A, it outlines that a council may, in accordance with a resolution of council, contribute money or otherwise grant financial assistance to persons for the purpose of exercising its functions.
Its functions being council's functions or their functions?
Their functions.
So it'd be okay for council if the council, if I got 8 votes in this chamber, to get a contribution to my next birthday party?
No. Section part 2 of that same act, and it's up there on the screen. It outlines that where a person acts for private gain, that they are eligible to be granted financial assistance. However, that's where it has to go through the process of being public notification process for 28 days and be put on notice. So where it is for private gain, that's the process that must be followed.
And so we're determining that a religion is a public benefit?
That's how we've interpreted it. It's a community place of worship.
Oh, okay. And so we're quite comfortable just handing out checks to churches as the need arises? Churches, synagogues, mosques?
Well, if I may, that'd be up to the chamber, Councillor Grove, as the Act states.
So the Act says that we can just go around handing out money by council resolution?
If the chamber, if the majority of the chamber
Jehovah's
deems
Witness,
that it has
Scientologists.
merits.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will.
Councillor Grove.
I have concern about the changes to the Local Government Act. The intent of the changes, were to lock down councillors from just willy-nilly handing out money. When I was also contacted about this, the motion as it read had some merit. I was keen to support amendments to that motion to ensure that $5,000 did come from the Mayoral Charity Relief Fund. Can I just confirm with you that that's your intent, to contribute 5 of that 10 from that fund?
I'm more than happy. It has to go through the due process of 2 officers seeing that it has merit before it's given to me. So, I'm just very concerned about the precedent we're setting
and the issue of 10 versus 15, I would quite happily support, in this case, repairs to the carpet, the installation of CCTV. What I would not support that funding going towards is any religious ornamentation. I think that's something which really needs to be produced by that community. That's something spiritual, that's something special, that is territory. The contents, you know, and I don't know what the interior looked like before. I've seen pictures otherwise, but that sort of material needs to be sourced from that community. I think we need to set very clear boundaries between what is church or temple in this space and what is state and what is our appropriate function in that space. I have concerns about stepping into the place of the insurance industry. I'm not going to provide recommendations as to the merits or otherwise of contents insurance. That's not my job. But with respect to one-off cases, I know I used the previous mayoral charity fund to cover $1,000 in lost sporting equipment, and I was quite comfortable to do so. So I'm going to flag my concerns with the amount of money being funded, and I'd seek a clarification from the mover that it would be for the purposes of non-spiritual items, namely security, carpet, that sort of stuff, and we'll take it from there.
Councillor Grove, if you actually look at item 1 of the motion, to assist with immediate repairs and new security measures to improve the safety.
And so that would be the only source of the 15 grand? Yes.
Okay.
So contents insurance, you know, once again, not back in that.
Okay.
You know, why don't we just cut a cheque to the insurance industry as a whole? Just give them...
Well, Councillor,
insure everything.
I don't think there's no need for Councillor Sahar to answer the question. It's up there, so. Councillor Garrard.
Mayor, I suppose I support I speak against the resolution. I support the comments that were made tonight that such an action is certainly shocking, brings anguish, the destruction was unbelievable. I can well appreciate that. I saw images on television, and I think everyone who saw those images would have felt sickened when they see that happen. However, what I see happening here tonight is a process without a process, is a function without a process here. I've asked questions. There's no paperwork that I can be told about that's into the organisation. I would have expected that there should have been. Councillor Grove has asked various questions which people would have expected to be asked about what would the money be spent on, and there's no guidance about what that would happen. It's all going to happen later. I think everybody does want to help, and in my own self, I would suggest that there should be an appeal created, and I've been in these positions before where I haven't hesitated as the mayor of a city to set up an appeal to assist any particular circumstance. And I would normally recommend to council that we would kick off an appeal maybe with a token $2,000 or something, which then the community can get behind such a great group as we have here in order to raise more money. That's worked, and that is what happened. What has happened in the past in terms of my behaviour. I've got trouble just giving the amount of $15,000. I would have been the same comment if it had been 10. I just think it should have been an amount with more purpose as to why. It should have been Councillor Elmore talked about ratios, you know. I don't know how his ratios been on the cup yesterday, but you know, my attitude is ratios. You put down $2,000 and you might be able to raise 20 or raise 30 or whatever. You make a statement on behalf of the community that we're behind this organisation, and you then, you're out there trying to ensure that there's other money comes into the organisation to cover their damages. Yes, it's easy to stand here and say, yes, I'm going to vote for it because it's a popular cause. But every winter people had their homes burnt down. And it'll happen, unfortunately, in Cumberland City, and it'll happen in other parts of New South Wales and Sydney, where houses will be burnt down because people just do silly things when they need to put a heater on, or because they can't afford a heater and they leave a candle on, or something simple like that. I've had my own house blown up, but I didn't need to go out and get a.
They missed.
Yeah, they missed me, but I didn't need to go out and get a public campaign to raise money to address the issues that weren't addressed by insurance back then. I just think this sets it sets a tone for everybody else in the community. Councillor Campbell says, well, it's only for little people. Well, unfortunately, it's little people who get into trouble. And little people will have their houses burnt down, and I suppose now the little people can come to council and say, can we get council to fund it for any number of thousands of dollars. The example that was given earlier, that we give money to drought relief, I don't see any comparison there to giving money to drought relief to a country, to people who live in a country, to people who contribute to the country, to people who pay rates in the country. I understand, would this organisation pay rates? Aren't they a religious organisation that pay rates there?
I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor Garrett. Yeah, it's a church.
Probably don't.
Probably don't, yeah.
Probably don't. Yet people who are on the land have effectively holdings, and they do pay rates, and they pay all sorts of things, in short, to contribute to what this country receives of them. Now, so that's just a very, very, very bad example to compare. But leave that aside, that's only a set of words. But in closing, I just think if you do it for this organisation in the way you're doing it tonight, you do it for every organisation. You don't change. To change your mind is going to make a hypocrite of you. I just think we should have gone about this a whole different way.
You, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Lake.
Yeah. Yes, am I on? Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm listening to what Councillor Garrard has said, and I think clearly there is an issue with the fact that we don't have an emergency relief fund. And this is the second time we've encountered a worthy cause we'd like to provide money to where our existing funds guidelines don't cover the nature of the donation. I support this motion tonight. I'm really sorry to hear about the damage to this temple, and I'd like us to send the message that this is not who we are as a community, and I'm sure it was very heartbreaking to see. Looking at the officer's information, there's $379,000 in the Community Infrastructure Fund. $10,000 from that fund to help this temple get on their feet and set themselves up with appropriate insurance for the future won't be missed. I'd like to remedy the situation in relation to the lack of an appropriate fund by proposing, and I won't do it tonight, I'll bring it to a future meeting, but proposing that we set up an emergency relief fund. We could put about $40,000 in it every year, and if it doesn't get used, it can be carried over, and we can ask officers to write some guidelines about what emergency relief means.
Councillor Lake has the floor.
Correct.
No, Councillor Lake has the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Lake.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. If we get some guidelines written around the scope of emergency relief, then I think we can apply this consistently across the board. It's not this group's fault that we don't have an emergency relief fund at the moment. It's not the fault of the temple, is what I'm saying. It's important to preserve the integrity of our grants process. I agree with Councillor Garrard. So I think we can resolve this by coming to a future meeting and setting up an emergency relief fund. But for the purposes tonight, where we have somebody in a fairly destitute situation, I support this motion and I ask other people to support it with me.
Thank you, Councillor Lake. I have Councillor Zareka and then Councillor Garrard. Councillor Zareka.
Yeah. Mr Mayor, just a question. Wouldn't 15,000, maybe a question to Suman as well, wouldn't 15,000 cover or barely cover just the camera system there?
Through to Mr Mayor, if you allow.
Well, I don't know unless you have the knowledge. Oh, you do? Thank you, Councillor Saha.
I understand all the concern my councillor colleague have, and I have actually requested the temple to give me a quotation or list of item, and they have provided that to me last night, and that's about $52,000. But I'm coming back to your question. They got a CCTV and alarm, and they have been quoted $5,000 for that.
Okay.
And that is a CCTV that will store in the cloud, not like a one where you have a hard drive at the center. The carpet, $8,000. And they have the front door and some of the back room entrance and windows. So those need to be replaced, and that's $3,000. So the carpet is the content. I mean, they're talking about the glass.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can we put the motion?
Well,
if that answer your question,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I just had the question for the cameras. Yeah.
all right. I've had numerous speakers on either side. Well, I've had 2 against and the rest 4. And I have a motion that the motion be put. All those in favour of the motion being put? Against, declare that carried. All those in favour of the motion as written? Aye. Against? I declare that carried. Councillor Garrard recorded. Against? Thank you. Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Saha, but I have put it and it's... I'm sorry. My apologies, Councillor Saha. Council, items by exception, and I will run through the list. Item 210, bad debts write-off. Is there any speakers on that item? No. 211, draft customer experience strategy? No. No. 212, draft Cumberland library strategy? No. 213, the response to the notice of motion proposed city status for Cumberland Council? No. Yes. Councillor Zeta? Okay, Zeta, thank you. 214, response to notice of motion of status of resolution support service in the state of homelessness in Cumberland? Yes. Councillor Hamid? But you said no, didn't you?
Yes, that was Joe that said no.
Oh. All right, Councillor Addy. 215, the annual report. Yes. Councillor Grove. 217, the adoption of the waste and resources recovery strategy. No. No. 218, the Cumberland open space and recreation strategy. Councillor Lake. (219) the Cumberland Heritage Committee minutes of the meeting of 18th of September 2018 in the Local Heritage Awards 2018. No. 220, the tender evaluation report design services for Granville Park Stadium. No. Yes, Councillor Zeta. Okay, so and the next one's the notice of motion, which we have to discuss. So I'll ask for a mover for Two, Councillor Addy and Councillor Elmore, that item 210, 211, 212, 217, 219 be moved. All those in favour? One, two, three. Yeah, we do. All those against? Declare that carried. Just let me get my house in order. Thank you, councillors. 8. Call it, then we're abandoned. If you wait for them to come back in, you can keep operating. I'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes. Okay, I'll resume at 8:09. Item 213, response to notice of motion, proposed city status for Cumberland Council. Councillor Zeta, you wish to speak on this?
So I had a question actually. So Canterbury Bankstown Council, they've registered the business name and they're using that business name for their advertising, I suppose.
I believe that, if I may, yeah, I believe it's trading.
Trading
as,
yeah.
Yes.
Would that not be the simpler option for us to go down that road rather than try to formally request the change of the actual legal name?
I think it may be a lot cheaper.
That's what I mean. It may be a lot cheaper. And it's not prohibited by the Act for us to actually do that based on the legal advice provided. Sorry? I'm just saying, if we're going to go down that road, then potentially maybe the simplest and the cheapest option may be to simply register a business name, which will cost $100 for 3 years at a time, and just go down that road. The question is, do we want to go down that road? That decision, I think, still needs to be made. We've got this response back, but council needs to decide whether they want to go down the road of using the name or using the word city within our name for the purpose of the public. That's, I mean, I just wanted to ask that question of staff, that yes, we can simply go and do that.
There would be a cost because of our signage would have to be changed, and that would be 160,000 as far as updating all our signage and etc. So
in all fairness, we're looking to update our signage anyway.
Well, before we continue, thank you, Councillor Addy. Move, Councillor Addy. Is there a second? Seconded, Councillor Zareka. Do you wish to continue, Councillor Zeta?
No, I just want to put forward that because at the present time, I don't think we've actually made a decision as to whether we've received the feedback as to how we can go about doing it. But as a council, we haven't made a decision as to whether we want to go ahead and use the name or use the word city within our name. Yep. And that's potentially something that we do need to make a decision on.
I'll be very lenient and consider that as an open question to all councillors.
Well, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Zareka, you wish to...
Can I also make a question, ask a question, sir?
Certainly.
Can't we move a resolution from our bar, from the chair, sir? No, it doesn't have to be a matter of urgency. We can move a resolution, and if we get a second, we can pass. Just on this report.
Well, you'll have this report, and council can, at any future council meeting, can move whatever they deem. So.
But as in today.
Yeah, you can.
Well, in that case, I moved not just for the recommendation so the adoption of the report. I'd move that council actually changes the name to Cumberland City Council now. As a trading name, yeah.
As a trading name.
Any second?
So purely with no further actions, just purely registering.
Yeah, register. Yeah.
That
I
is
just
a
need a
trading
seconder.
name. Well, I'll go. No, I'll ask Councillor Addy if he's willing to accept it. Yep, certainly. Mr McNulty wants some clarification. Mr McNulty.
Councillor Zareka, is your intention that we just register the name and do nothing, or do we register the name and then implement it? Because there's implementations where the cost comes in of about $160,000 for immediate actions, and then we would do other uniforms as they become due, we change them over. But the immediate signage of buildings and stuff we anticipate would be around $160,000. No, that's fine.
And there's no better time to do it because the signs haven't all been put up yet. And we were still talking about gateway signage. Nothing's been produced, and there's no better time to do it than the present.
No, thank you.
Councillor Addy, are you accepting that?
Mr. Mayor, I do accept it, however, I want to add to it as well. If we're going down this path, I don't want council all of a sudden. I don't want council just all of a sudden just jump up and stop everything and start changing things over. What we should be doing is starting to change over what we can in the immediate future with respect to the signage we haven't done yet, etc., etc. The rest of the stuff, like your shirts and whatever else you guys keeps talking about, just gradually as they wear out, just keep changing. We don't have to actually jump in full bore and throw everything else out and just start all from over again. Okay, so that is what that's the intention, yes? That's fine then. And by the way, can someone please tell me what the C stands for in Cumberland Council? The last C? Community. Then why do we have the word community underneath the word Cumberland Council? That come on. We get more amendments.
Councillor Grove.
I propose that we register the name. We name the city after one of Holroyd's greatest leaders, Greg Ritchie Council.
Mr. Mayor, if that's going to be the case, we also include Mark Ridley in there as well.
I'll take that as a comment and I'll move on.
I think I might
I have Councillor Elmore, then Councillor Zeta, then Councillor Hamid, then Councillor Lake.
Mayor.
Certainly, if that's going to clarify things, Councillor Lake, what's your...
The current motion's unlawful because the company name is Cumberland Council. I think what you're trying to say is business name is what you want to say.
Yep.
Not company name.
No, I take your point. If we can have that correction.
It wasn't just simply register the business name, but also actually implement the change, because there's nothing in there. Exactly, there's nothing actually in there regarding the implementation of the name.
I believe I did have Councillor Elmore. He did drop off for a second. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was some talk about when Cumberland Council was formed, and I remember this vividly, that people on council were saying we need to rebrand the whole place instantly, and there was some friction. There was a bit of friction against that. You know, some of the parks in Holroyd, some of the parks around Auburn, they still got their old names on them. So I can't really see that there any benefit by changing the name from Cumberland Council to Cumberland City Council when you've got to change all those signs over again. And those new street blades, I've apparently got a new street blade in my street. Does street blade, obviously it's got the street name on it, it's got the Cumberland Council logo, but has it got Cumberland Council written on it? So it doesn't. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elmore. Councillor Hamid.
A couple of questions perhaps for the General Manager. Somebody talked about the fact that not all of the signs have been put up yet. Does that matter?
No.
So that project will continue as is?
The street signs you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, they don't have, they've just got the 3 Cs,
right.
the street name and the suburb name, so they're not affected.
And they've been,
That'll
right.
continue.
My other question is, what other expenses will do you anticipate through accepting this?
Ms Endicott has a list.
Ms Endicott?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a range of signs on vehicles, on council buildings, where we'd have to include the word city. So we'd go through, look at immediate locations, we'd update the council website, print material, a range of other options, which we've got a significant list. If we were to do a full exercise, that would be $900,000. However, what we've said is $160,000 would be the key core essentials, where we'd apply the word city to the name to begin with, and then over time we'd do it. So council staff uniforms, for example, in the next batch that was being ordered, we'd start integrating it and we'd enable council staff to continue to wear those. So we've prioritised the full list.
So vehicles, buildings, uniforms, what else is there on that list?
Stationery, for example. So we'd probably we'd utilise the stationery until it ran out, but we'd put an order in around that. That pretty much takes us through to 160. There'd be some legal costs involved in registering and updating some of our style guides, but that's pretty much covers the 160,000, those items added up.
And the 900?
The 900 goes into the full extent, including council staff uniforms, full signage, a range of different, there's just extra costs in there if we were to do a significant update.
Straight away, but you're
That's
not going
it.
to do that. You do it over a period
That's
of time,
correct.
and it costs 160.
And that doesn't, we wouldn't recommend that we implemented it in that way.
Councillor Hammond.
So you're saying potentially this could cost us $900,000? No.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's what we're saying is if we were to apply the word city across everything that we have, all collateral, it would. However, we would do it in a measured manner where we'd roll that out over a significant number of years in some cases.
So after it's completed, so to speak, it would have costed that much money?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. What we'd do is simply just do an update of any design once we were renewing. So we have to renew those things from time to time. Staff uniforms have a life span. There is a cost. It wouldn't have a cost impact. We'd simply update our
What is the lifespan
artwork.
of uniform?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure what that would be.
Didn't we just get new uniforms?
Yeah. Yes, so many staff have brand new uniforms and they would last for a significant number of years.
So you're saying that $160,000 is all this will cost us?
Yes.
In the short term? And in the long term?
No. Well,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
The cost of uniforms is already built into the budget, obviously, but so we incur that cost anyway. So the point is, if we wanted to do all that, as soon as this decision was made, it's 900,000, but the 160,000 gets what has to be done in the short term done, and then we just incur the cost as part of the normal budget going forward.
And the other question I've got is, what is the benefit of this for our residents?
We're responding to a council resolution.
That's right. Nothing else. There is no other benefit to
Well,
our
I don't
residents.
think it's a question of the officers. It's a question for the council, not for the officers.
That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Mayor, this would be a complete waste of money. Whether that amount of money is 100,000 or 900,000, it's still a waste of money. There's absolutely no benefit to the community. No one has been able to identify any possible benefit to them. In my mind, it's associated with this obsession with branding that we've already seen, which emerged under the administrator and we haven't quite shaken off. Auburn Council was formerly Auburn City Council, but outside of people who either worked for the council or some councillors, nobody used that term. It was a formal kind of a term used in formal kind of situations. Your average citizen out there always spoke about Auburn Council. They did not say Auburn City Council. So you can put in whatever fancy words you like into a name, but you can't force people to use them. What's the point? A waste of money, no benefit to the community. So let's not do it.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Zareka?
Right of reply?
No, I had you on my list, I'm sorry. Okay, well, then I have Councillor Lake, then Councillor Grove. Councillor Lake.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's not just the money involved in registering the business name and trying to use it. It's the confusion that's created with an entity having two names operating concurrently. So you've got your corporate name of Cumberland Council, and then you've got your registered business name as Cumberland City Council. And it just causes an enormous amount of aggravation, because what happens is people you're having a legal relationship with, who are perhaps drawing a lease with you, some sort of a contract, they'll put the wrong name. They'll put Cumberland City Council when what they need to do is put the legal entity, Cumberland Council. No, Cumberland Council is the legal entity, not Cumberland City Council. If you're gonna go down this road of Cumberland City Council, then you really should go through the whole process of having a poll of electors, putting it back to the minister, getting it supported, and going through the governor and having the legal entity changed. But for goodness sake, don't do this. Don't create two names. I can't believe Canterbury Bankstown are doing it. It's nutty. and I don't think we're nuts, so.
Thank you, Councillor Lake. Councillor Grove.
I supported this this notice of motion initially because we're in the first couple months of a council term, and it was going to be a very definitive time for the council. It was going to set the tone, it was going to set the pace, it was going to set the culture. I didn't technically agree with where the motion was going to go. The reason I voted for it is because the council at that time needed to work out whether it was just going to be old, crusty, no to anything, or whether it was going to, you know, have a bold aspiration for the future, whether it was going to explore new ideas, whether it was going to have a strong, mature and assertive role within the greater Western Sydney region. So for that reason, I supported it. In all practicality, I do think that Cumberland as an entity needs to enhance its position on the regional stage. Are we a city? Well, when Councillor Lake performs a citizen's arrest on Councillor Zeta, alleging him of using a business name instead of a company name, she may drag him across the road to Maryland's police station, but Councillor Zeta will be tried ideally in the city of Parramatta. If he tried the same, you know, illegal activity in Regent's Park, you know, Councillor Huang might perform the same citizen's arrest, but he would potentially be tried if there are courts. I assume there's some sort of court presence in Bankstown. That's why Bankstown is trying to call itself a city, right? Burwood. Oh, well, that completely wrecks my argument. I'm very disappointed. We're going to need to rearrange the court system to back what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to go is that the regional centre, the centre of our business and you know, government activity for this part of the region, Parramatta or it's Bankstown, that's why they call themselves cities, or that's why they try and call themselves cities in one case. Cumberland Council is in many ways a dormitory council. We should aspire to activate some of our industrial precincts and improve the level of manufacturing jobs, but we are a council. We're not even a community. We're a series of communities. We're a service provider. We aspire to provide great services to those communities, but we are very much a council. And I think that's where my head's at with respect to this debate. I'm still proud of having, you know, cast my vote in that particular direction because I think it was the right tone and pace and culture to set for the council at that point in time. I think that setting is still the right setting to have for the council going forward. We do need to sell ourselves to the rest of Sydney. We do need to promote our community, its opportunities and what we have to offer. And I think that needs to be a continuing part of the council's agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Grove. Is there any more discussion? Well, if there's no more discussion, I don't need that. I'll go right of Councillor Zareki.
Right of reply.
I actually had Councillor Ad.
No, but it doesn't matter. I haven't got a problem either way.
I moved the motion.
No, you didn't. You moved an amendment which I added to my motion.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it.
All right. Okay.
I'll give you another one. Yeah. Mr. Mayor, wouldn't it be nice to be the Mayor of Cumberland City Council rather than just plain old Cumberland Council? Yeah?
There's one
yeah.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Zraker is not very good at interjections at other people, so let's just create a special rule for him where he gets to be heard in silence.
No, I agree, but it has been pointed out to me by the General Manager that we, as should be the custom, is how are we going to finance if this motion is carried? So I will hold your right of reply, Councillor Zareka, but...
are you referring to the 160?
Yes.
I'll use it next week, next year's budget. That's the only way to do it.
Okay, so with the mover, that if it is approved, that it'll be funded from
Next year's budget.
Yep. 1920.
A lot of
Thank
these.
you.
19/20.
Yeah.
A lot of these items have an expiry date. What Mr. Endicott was saying was, as soon as these items lose their life, we renew it to the city. There's no real cost. Either way, you're going to spend the money. The signage is already up. It says triple C. It doesn't say CC. It says triple C. All we're trying to do is correct the failure of VivMay to complete the process. And the notion that we're spending $900,000 is completely wrong. $160,000 is got to be spent anyway, whether it's stationery, uniforms, and anything that has a lifespan. As to why we're doing this, because we're a city of 245,000 people, correct? Is it 265 now?
We found 15 on the side.
So it's growing. Our boundaries all the way from Rookwood Cemetery up to the Prospect Reservoir. If that's not a city, I don't know what is.
Plenty of branch members in both.
That's right. So, as Councillor Grove said, we're setting the culture and setting a bar, setting the standard for our community to feel that we are and we do belong to a city. We're not just plain old CC. It's triple C now, Cumberland City Council.
Councillor Zareka, that closes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
No.
Against? No. I declare that lost.
Show of hands, Mr. Mayor.
Should call for a show of hands. All those in favour? Councillor Addy, Councillor Zareka, Councillor Rami, Councillor Zeta, Councillor Garrard. Those against? Councillor Elmore, Councillor Wong, Councillor Lake, Councillor Hammond, Councillor Christou, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Cummings. I declare that lost.
Council, I suppose.
Don't worry. Council, item 214, response to notice of motion of the status of resolution support services in the state of homelessness in Cumberland. Councillor Addy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry? Getting some notes, my notes from my bag. Is that okay with you guys? I mean, you know, we've got to get ready for the motions. Mr. Mayor, I've looked at the motion that's up before you at the moment, and before I move something, I just need to understand one thing. What does this motion actually do to assist the homeless?
Because Councillor Addy wishes to speak and he didn't nominate it,
I don't have a problem she wants to
okay, if with your indulgence, Councillor Addy, you wish to move, Councillor Hammond? Is there a seconder? Councillor Lake. Thank you, Councillor Addy. You have the floor.
No, I don't actually. She might as well speak now. Well, she's the one moving the motion.
Okay.
I'll be really precise, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity to commend and thank our staff on a very, very well written report. It provided really excellent key stats which painted a very clear picture on the breadth and scale of homelessness in our local Cumberland area. There's excellent analysis on some key drivers of homelessness, which I think is very, very important to identify. And this will help in developing strategies both for us and advocates around our LGA and other places as well. I'm happy to see that some really clear and actionable recommendations to mitigate drivers of homelessness have been identified as well. And it goes to show that homelessness exists, It's real, and we need to act, and we need to act now. And in fact, I've advised our planning staff to have a good long read of this, because homelessness is an issue, and we need to incorporate it in absolutely every single thing that we do here in council. Some very, very sad findings in the report, which is why we need to act now. Thank you again to Ms Endicott and her team on a very, very well written report.
Thank you, Councillor Hamid. I have, for some reason I thought Councillor Grave was first, but I've got Councillor Elmore. And then I've got Councillor Grave, then Councillor Campbell. Councillor Elmore, you're speaking in favour of the motion?
I am, Mr Mayor, I'm really pleased with the with this report that council officers put forward. We're learning, you know, with the people from the audit office here tonight, we're learning more and more about our city. I didn't realise that Cumberland Council has the third largest homeless people in Australia, and they're second in New South Wales to the city of Sydney, and you know, the city of Bankstown has got a much larger community than we have, and they've got less homeless people. So, but the concern that I have is, you know, we've got to fund all these programs from somewhere, and if we need all these services, I think that Cumberland Council should be getting some sort of grants from the state and federal governments to help us provide these services, because if this keeps to continue at the rate it is, we're going to be spending a lot more money than other councils to provide these services, and it's going to affect our long-term financial sustainability. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elmore. Councillor Grove?
Yes.
Speaking for or against?
Probably against.
Thank you, Councillor Grove.
Who is behind the Everybody's Home campaign?
Ms Endicott?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll ask Ms Howell to come up and explain the campaign in further detail.
Thank you, Ms Howell.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The Everybody's Home campaign is an initiative of a number of NGOs, including peak bodies like Shelter New South Wales and quite a number of local NGOs working in the homelessness space. There are 2 councils that are signed up to it, but it is an advocacy campaign calling for 5 actions to address the issue of homelessness more broadly.
What are the 5 actions?
I will refer to...
In the attachment.
They are on page 48 or page 156 of the business paper under action 5.1, and it talks about 5 key actions: support first home buyers, develop a national housing strategy, ensure a better deal for renters, provide immediate relief for Australians in chronic rental stress, and develop a plan to end homelessness by 2030.
So 156. So there were 5 actions. I've got 3 listed here. So I've got 1, sign up to Everybody's Home, 2, sign up to Refugee Council. Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. Sorry. That's it. Thank you. And what's the peak body that's coordinating it? Do we have a central peak body behind it, or is it just a coalition?
My understanding, it's a coalition. Many of the agencies, such as I said, Shelter New South Wales, Homelessness Australia, ACOS, most of them are NGOs. Salvation Army are a key player, many of the community housing providers, and as I said, the City of Adelaide and the City of Ballarat are 2 of the councils that are on board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't think participation with the Refugee Council of Australia, and from what I've just been advised, Everybody's Home is particularly the best way to get our foot in the door of either the government or the opposition on the SRSS issue. With respect to the temporary first 12-month homelessness project officer position, to be tasked with implementing the report recommendations. The items around affordable housing is with respect to SEP 70 and the Cumberland residential housing strategy I believe should be continue to be a responsibility for our planning team, and I would be very reluctant to support any extension of our existing arrangements with respect to affordable housing. With respect to the remaining items, the only item which I think would be of particular value to this community in its advocacy efforts for that homelessness project officer position would be the rough sleep account. My view, just as a resident of, who's in a number of our town centres throughout the year, we do have part of a rough sleeper problem. The issue around homelessness in this area, for the most part, is not a rough sleeper problem. It is a transitional housing and locating a secure place to live problem. And I don't think you can conflate the broader homelessness issue with our rough sleeper. Our rough sleeper is really the tip of that iceberg. The largest chunk of our homelessness population, from experience in working in welfare roles in Western Sydney, is people who are couch surfing rather than rough sleeping. In many ways, the rough sleeping issue is not a housing and homelessness issue, it's a mental health issue, and it requires intervention in those resources. I'm also very reluctant to go down the path of developing homelessness protocols. The community sector is entirely incompetent when it comes to developing homelessness protocols. The mess that has besieged the City of Sydney in recent years is because of the development of its homelessness protocols. They've tied the arms of public sector workers, they've tied the arms of police, they've tied the arms of government in managing the homelessness, the rough sleeper problem within the City of Sydney. If we're going down the path of developing our own protocols, you can expect to have similar practical challenges in dealing with rough sleeper problems in the future. I think rough sleeper challenges are a big issue right now. It's going to multiply because we're going to tie our own hands behind our backs with this protocol. So for that reason, I would most definitely oppose the recommendation in the business paper.
Thank you, Councillor Grove. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendation, and I would like to start by congratulating the staff who are involved in putting this report together. It's a very substantial and a very thorough report, and it's also rather frightening when you read through it, and very saddening to see the state of affairs in Cumberland. That we figure so highly in the list of local government areas in relation to homelessness, and we have the highest concentration of people who'll be affected by the cutting of these benefits to refugees also. It's a very interesting aspect of this report that those things come together. I think the report was probably more about homelessness than anything, but how that intersects with refugees and the loss of their benefits. Homelessness, Councillor Grove spoke about homelessness, and he wants to have a rather narrow definition of it, but I think this report makes it very clear that there are a range of conditions involved in being homeless, and there are a range of causes. Mental health is one of them, drug addiction is another, just being destitute is another. And talking about destitution, I'm drawn to this statement that between 75 and 80% of people who lose access to SRSS support are at risk of becoming destitute. We think of ourselves as being a civilised country and a wealthy country. When we have this level of poverty, homelessness, it makes me really wonder about that. How do we see ourselves as a nation, as a community? And I think that we must have a sense of compassion in relation to those people who are doing it tough, and we must do what we can for them. the idea of establishing a temporary 12-month homelessness project officer position, I think, is a very good one. And I think it probably acknowledges that we can't find all the answers to everything in a resolution and then leave it at that. If someone is on the job and following things up, and there may be a change of tack here and there along the way, so that there's a reaction to conditions that are unfolding. I want to refer to part of the report about staff training, and I do that because at the last meeting we passed a resolution in relation to the planning proposal for Railway Street, Lidcombe. And that recommendation from the staff came to us without any mention of affordable housing. There was some discussion in the pre-meeting, there was some discussion here about it, but it got passed, and there was absolutely nothing. That was a major development, Lidcombe, a major development, and no allowance whatsoever for affordable housing. So I think that I'd like to quote a sentence from the reports on page 113. All staff express compassion and a willingness to assist people in need. All staff? I think some staff, probably most staff, but that compassion did not show up in the recommendation to council about that proposal, the Railway Street Lidcombe proposal, and I think that's shameful, and the way that council has voted at the last meeting was shameful. I think that this report should develop a bit of compassion in all of us when we realise the extent of this problem, and that we have to have some ownership in finding solutions to it, and that extends to the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Zeta.
Yeah, just through to the relevant staff. Now, just in respect to this everybody's home website, is there anywhere on the website? I went through this website, looked at every single page, could not see a contact number, could not see the name of the organisation that runs this particular website, which kind of worries me. Yet they're asking you to register and provide your information and potentially donate money. Yet there's nothing in there. The only place I was able to find something of a potentially that led me to another website was under their privacy page. And when you go to their privacy page, there is a one line here. There's a section here that states that if you need to contact us or have any questions, please email. It's not even a phone number. It's an email address. Everybody's home at communityhousing.org.au, and that's it in this whole website. That's the only place in this whole website I was able to obtain some sort of a contact address to actually try and see who runs this particular website. And when you go to this particular when you go to the domain address that's attached to this website address, this email address, it takes you to the Community Housing Association New South Wales. And under this particular association supposedly represents not-for-profit organisations that run low-cost housing. But we're being asked to potentially register and register with this particular campaign. But when you look at this website, it's as if they're trying to hide who's actually running the campaign. Okay, so that kind of worries me a little bit. That at the end of the day, you couldn't give me a straight answer. Well, I wasn't provided a straight answer, or previously when Councillor Grove asked the question, he wasn't provided a straight answer as to who actually runs this website, and there was none of the names that were given. Because when you go to that particular domain, it's actually Community Housing Industry Association New South Wales. So potentially, when this campaign has been looked at, I don't think it's been looked at in detail to determine who's actually running this campaign, which again worries me. The report that's my first issue. Secondly, I'm trying to work out how the report recommendations are going to assist the refugees that potentially may lose funding subject to the changes that are going to occur or have occurred with their allowances. That was my understanding initially when this particular motion was put forward, was for council to come back with options to assist them in the event that they lose their funding, eventually become homeless. When I've gone through this report, the majority of the recommendations are around the provision of low-cost housing or additional low-cost housing within Cumberland in order to make those properties available to, I assume, the refugees who become homeless so they can stay somewhere. But then, I'm not sure if this is something that was looked at when the report was prepared. When you actually go to the Department of Family and Community Services, it's a New South Wales government website, and you look at the frequently asked questions and who is eligible to access affordable housing, one of the requirements is you must be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. These refugees aren't Australian citizens or permanent residents because they're trying to get to that position. So in other words, you cannot access low-cost housing in New South Wales or in Australia unless you're an Australian citizen or a permanent resident. So all the solutions that are being put forward under this recommendation, which are predominantly in respect of getting additional low-cost housing within Cumberland, I don't think are going to work for these people. So that's kind of my issue, because predominantly we're trying to get, the recommendation states that we need to register with Everybody's Home, we need to register with the Refugee Council, and potentially advocate for more low-cost housing to allow the refugees to live in. But because they're not citizens or permanent residents, they can't act. Well, that's what I mean. But predominantly the main issue, main options there are those. So I would have thought advocacy 100%. We need to advocate for them. But I would have thought at the end of the day, looking at what we can do directly to assist them. Okay, if they lose their funding, how can they get jobs? How can we assist them? Language is probably, I'm sure, is an issue. How can we improve the language skills? Secondly, we have 70 seniors housing properties that we currently rent out to seniors. Can we not look at potentially...
Councillor Hammond, secondly Councillor Saha, those in favour? Against, declare
some of
carried.
those 70 properties to possibly allow some of these refugees to actually rent out themselves. I mean, I thought they were the types of solutions that potentially we can come back with that are practical, that are direct, and that can occur straight away, more so than trying to increase the number of low-cost housing, which they cannot access anyway. So I really think the report recommendations were not well thought out, and to actually try and back these report recommendations, I don't think that's going to actually assist the refugees in being able to find appropriate housing. So I will not be supporting these recommendations only on the basis that that I don't believe they're actually going to assist the refugees. I really think we need to look at other options, such as potentially making available some of their senior housing to the refugees. That's practical assistance that can be directly provided to them, assisting in potentially helping them improve the language skills so they can work, because they are legally allowed to work, and so on. But it's pie in the sky stuff to try and think that by increasing the number of low-cost housing that's available in our LGA is going to allow them to, or resolve this particular issue, because it will not resolve the issue solely on the basis that they can't access them. So I don't know what the solution is. The two things I put forward are possibilities subject to council agreeing to it. My other issue is these recommendations have not been costed. We're asked to agree to the employment of an individual for 12 months, on not only on the basis that we potentially obtain funding from an external source, but if we don't get funding from an external source, that we fund it ourselves. But how much are we talking about? And potentially the job that this person is expected to do is to try and prioritise the increase in low-cost housing, which again they can't access. So what's the use of employing this person if the result that this person is trying to achieve is not going to be is not going to benefit the refugees that we're trying to assist? So again, it hasn't been costed. There's no costings there as to how much we may have to pay if we employ this individual, because you can't get external funding. And secondly, I don't believe the employment of this particular person will provide the solution to help these particular refugees in being housed. So I just think I don't believe the solutions are there, and we really need to go back and have a real think about it. And I think one of the main issues as to why it's not going to work is I don't believe council staff considered the fact that refugees cannot access low-cost affordable housing because they're neither Australian citizens or permanent residents. Thank you. No, social housing we don't look after.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Lake, then Councillor Addy. Councillor Lake.
Thanks, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm a bit confused about Councillor Zeta's views on how we can't assist refugees. I mean, surely the issue is to restore the SRSS payments as a first point, and well, at least support some aspect of the resolution, because
Councillor Lake has the floor.
Thank you. Because ultimately that's going to be the real crunch point for about 3,000 people in Cumberland, it's an administrative decision. It's not something that Parliament can overturn. So it has to be direct advocacy, has to be ministerial, and the change is administrative and is a simple change to allow a different approach to cutting these SRSS payments, which aren't very much anyway. They're about 80% of the dole. Without an income, of course, people can't afford to rent anyway. So the issue of housing and paying for housing becomes a non-issue for people who have had their SRSS payments cut. They have no income at all. So that has to be the fundamental plank of assisting the refugees in our community who are about to lose those payments. But in relation to signing up to campaigns, you know, I've probably signed up to a few campaigns in my time. Some have been good, some have done nothing. I sign up, I pull out if they aren't any good, but I give it a go. There's a number of really good campaign partners in that Everybody's Home campaign, including St Vincent de Paul, the Salvation Army, Mission Australia, Evolve Housing, Baptist Care, the Mercy Foundation, Jesuit Social Services. All those people are collectively signed up. I think Cumberland Council could add its name to that group and not feel at all that they were wasting their time. So I'm not quite sure I understand your concern about campaigns and signing up to them. The Refugee Council's campaign Roof Over My Head, if you read that document, it's quite a substantial document. It explains to you about the SRSS payment and the effect that it will have when it is cut on people on bridging visas who have been waiting for many years to have decisions made. The process is very, very slow, which is the reason they have to keep drawing the SRSS payments. The Refugee Council report makes an important point. I think they say about 80% of people on bridging visas who are applying for permanent residency are likely to obtain that permanent residency. So these are our future citizens that are being treated so shabbily. And I think it's a disgusting, absolutely disgusting policy. And I don't think that there are many people within your party who would agree with it if they really understood the implications of what was going on there. In relation to a homelessness project officer position, the homelessness project officer won't be doing the planning around affordable housing. That's our planning department's work, and we need to work really quickly to get that residential housing strategy done with the priority that it should be given. We need to be in workshops and we need to sort that out. The homelessness project officer position, as I see it, would be a coordinating role that would liaise with all the community services in our area and try and establish some sort of linkage, work out where the gaps are and work out how to advocate to get those gaps filled. Now, in Wentworthville and Marylands, over the past year, I have noticeably observed many more people on the streets at night, and it's not something that I have seen in the past. It's a rising issue, especially in the Marylands area, especially around this building. Go and walk around the car park at night after council meetings. and see what you can find. It's not a good picture. We need somebody here on the ground day after day working. The council staff, when they encounter these problems, they try and deal with them. And I'm told, sadly, that it's a really challenging task to find a bed for the night for somebody in this area. And it takes hours of telephone time to do it. A project officer hopefully can work through all those problems and start to streamline some of these processes and get things moving. You know, I'd be surprised if we don't get funding for something as significant as a Cumberland Council homelessness officer, given the data that our officers have so competently collected. But if we don't, I would welcome community services coming back to us and talking to us about having that funded internally, because I think it's absolutely critical given what I'm seeing at the moment. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Lake. I have Councillor Hammett's moved and Councillor Lake seconded. I have on the list, I have Councillor Addy, then Councillor Zeta, then Councillor Grove. If you're answering a question and you can be brief and precise.
The reason why I put forward my objection towards the recommendations is because I don't believe at the present time, with the exception of advocacy towards the federal government, I don't believe any of those options or points are going to provide any refugee with a roof on top of their head. That's my issue.
Thank you, Councillor Zeta. You've answered the question. Okay.
Oh, if you've got...
We're next, Councillor Addy.
Let's see what yours says first.
I was going to move...
Councillor Grove.
I was going to move that point 2 be deleted, that point 1, the preamble to point 1 be deleted. However, the 3 dot points, I was quite happy to do. I explored the Refugee Council's campaign. Look, it's not fantastic, but it's certainly not their worst campaign. So I don't think these campaigns, on reflection, will necessarily do us harm. I do think the report recommendations of that strategy will do us harm. I think they will do our community harm. And I think it's particularly the homeless protocols, they will impede our...
Before you continue, Councillor Grove, is there a second for the amendment? No?
I'll second it. I'm going to change it slightly.
Councillor?
Okay. I'd like to change it slightly. I'd like to bring back the old motion that was there before, please. I'd like to note the report, not adopt the report. I believe the staff are at least entitled to the fact that we did have the report and they actually undertook the report. So out of courtesy and respect to the staff, we note the report that's actually there. You can't just dismiss it. Okay? It's an emotional aspect everyone kept talking about this evening. So I'd like to note the report, if you want to bring it back up. So note the report, wherever the preamble said, but don't adopt the recommendations. So if you go back to the original motion where it was, so adopt, instead of adopt, note the draft State of Homelessness and Cumberland Research Report, and don't include the rest of it. Okay. Item number 2, I really don't see a benefit. Can I ask a question before I continue with my? Is that okay? Just through to Merrin, through you, Mr. Merrin. Did you actually speak to any housing provider about some stats of what they do and how they do, and what the waiting lists are, and what the oversupply of housing stock is in the area?
Ms. Howe?
In relation to the current wait list of housing in Cumberland, our consultations yet were with housing providers and homelessness services around the issues more broadly.
No, not homelessness services. I'm talking about housing providers.
Yes, we did consult with both Housing New South Wales and housing providers in
Which
relation
housing
to...
providers, sorry, Mr. Mayor, which housing providers did you speak to?
Confirm, Evolve Housing for Youth.
And what did Evolve Housing, for argument's sake, say about the state of supply of affordable housing stock?
I don't have that specific information. I'd have to refer to the interviews that we conducted with each of them.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, so what I'd like to do, thank you very much, what I'd like to do is note the report. I do not want the recommendations. I just note the draft State of Homelessness and Cumberland Research Report and that's it. Don't sign up to anything, because I'll explain to you why in a second as to why I don't want to sign up to anything.
The mover of the amendment, whether
I haven't finished yet, so when I finish the whole...
Okay.
So, the first two items, sign up to whatever, no. Make number two, number one, note the report. Two, the same one about writing to and having a meeting with Dutton and what's his name, Coleman.
Let's cut Dutton. I mean, about saving the trees. True, let's see Coleman. Let's at least get.
Yeah, but Coleman's a part. See, this is the issue we're going to face. And number three, with respect to seek funding to establish a temporary, seek funding grants to establish, because we're not going to pay for it ourselves. External funding, yes, seek external funding. It just says seek funding, which could also mean funding from Paul's pocket to Peter's back pocket type of thing. Is that okay with you?
External funding to establish. Nah.
Well, we need homelessness. There's an issue with homelessness.
So we're not going to. I don't want to adopt the report or implement the report.
We're not adopting the report. We're noting the report.
So we're just going to hire a council officer to count bums.
No, I'll explain to you when I go through as to what it is. Yes or no?
Well, it's got to implement the report recommendations.
I believe Councillor Grave, do you accept that?
So, if Councillor Zaddy will put well, you both were speaking, it's a bit Brangelina sometimes. A homelessness project officer position, put a full stop after position and we'll be fine.
Position?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Mayor, can I explain?
Because I believe Councillor Zeta seconded the amendment. Do you accept that?
Yeah, accept. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Addy.
Now can I start my speech?
Yes, if you can be...
I've got 5 minutes plus extension.
Go on, Councillor Addy.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to rush through something that's actually quite important, then you guys want to rush me, shut me down, I'll shut up and sit down. Okay.
Continue, Councillor Addy.
A few things have been said through this chamber which are part of my speech, but however, I will reiterate and then remind people of what's going on. If you look at this motion, if you look at the entire report, we have got a homelessness issue mixed in with a refugee issue, mixed in with an affordable housing issue, mixed in with a social housing issue, etc., 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 all bundled into one motion to try and fix the entire existence of property issues, affordable issues, homeless issues in Cumberland through an ad hoc, run-by-night report. This is not the way we're going to do things. What we're looking at is we have to look at things individually. One, we need to look at the SRS changes and speak and advocate to try and bring those and keep those there to assist the refugees that are within this area. Yes, that's 100% required. We do require someone to at least look at the homelessness, because if you look at the councils around the area that in the report I think also shows that actually have a homelessness report or homelessness reaction policy, etc. They're all about how they treat the homeless people. None of them are actually there on how to fix their problem. Councillor Zada was correct after our conversation earlier today about the fact that if you are a refugee, you're not an Australian citizen, nor are you a permanent resident. You do not qualify for affordable housing. They do qualify for social housing. Nowhere in this report does anyone even look at the issue of social housing. Yes, it's not our problem. It is a government issue, but there's no one advocating for social housing issues. Refugees cannot receive affordable housing. And let's look at what affordable housing is, because we throw the word around this place like, you know what, affordable, affordable, affordable. What is affordable housing? Under the current steps that we have and the definitions of affordable, even you, Mr. Mayor, can actually qualify for affordable housing because of your actual bracket of income. The bracket of income for anyone to actually receive affordable housing, you must be earning somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000 a year to actually be qualifying to get the standard priced unit that we have here in Sydney. The average price of a unit in Sydney is somewhere between $550 and $600 a week. The affordable housing providers, of which I'll speak to you about an issue with the campaign partners, the affordable housing providers give you a 20% discount on that income, provided that amount is no more than 30 or 40% maximum of your entire yearly income. So if the average rent out there after the discount is around $450, we're talking about $25,000 a year. Now, 30% of an amount to equal $25,000 a year is what? It's $75,000 to $80,000 a year. What refugee is earning $80,000 a year? What household income for a refugee is earning $80,000 a year? You're looking at the wrong point. We're here to fix the issue with SRSS and also the refugee status and homelessness. What homeless person is earning $80,000 a year? You talk about overcrowding this as an actual definition of homelessness. Well, blow me down. I was actually 15 or 16 before I moved out of my room, where I had 3 other brothers sitting in the same room. Was I homeless? I had a roof over my head. But today, it's actually homelessness, overcrowding. Our parents came to this country and they lived in houses with 3 and 4 families. Doesn't mean they were homeless. That's the only options they had. Today, the people have a myriad of options, yet they still complain that no, there's nothing being done for us from a government perspective. Look at the narrower issue, not the broader issue. We need to fix the problem with SRSS, go and see the ministers and tell them the plight that we have in this area and try and get them to fix our problem. We need to find a homeless person and look at a policy that actually deals with homeless people, not throw affordable housing in there. Not throw social housing in there. That is not our forte. That is not something that we can do. None of us will actually sit and, actually, you know what? Most of us here will actually can apply for affordable housing and actually meet the criteria because we work and because we have an income. Sorry? Well, you're probably on about 7 or 8 houses. Now, what is very low income, by the way? What is very low income? The government under SEP 70 sees very low income as 50% less than the median price, the median wage. What is the median wage? The median wage today is set at $85,800 a year. 50%, as they say in the actual SEP, is $42,900. That is actually very low income. No refugee earns this. No homeless person earns this. We are barking up the wrong tree. Look at the core issues, fix the core issues. Forget about affordable housing and social housing. That is a broader spectrum which, as Councillor Lake said, we have to look at that and look at our housing strategies. Not try and fix someone else's problem, like refugees, by changing affordable housing. I did too speak to a couple of the housing providers. Second. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Moved. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you, Mr Seven Houses. However, Mr Mayor, I did speak to an affordable housing provider, of which, if you actually look at that list of campaign partners, that the Community Housing Industry Association, who actually owns the campaign, who happens to be a partner of the actual same group that actually owns the campaign, remove the religious organisations from this, and every single other organisation is an affordable housing provider. How are they helping homelessness when the homeless don't actually comply to actually be able to apply for an affordable house? It doesn't. It's like you're turning. It's like a dog chasing the tail. They do not. They do not qualify for affordable housing. Yet we have affordable housing providers. Evolve Housing. We've got Mission Australia. I know 100% they are because they're one of the ones in Parramatta. We've got people like Link Housing, an affordable provider. City West Housing, an affordable provider. I know they've joined with them, but the issue is that they've joined with them for what purpose? For gain for their own pocket. They charge, and I spoke to these people. They charge an average of somewhere between 7 and 11% management fee for all the affordable housing that they actually provide, the affordable people. In addition to that, and by the way, they gave me some other stats as well, one provider only has less than 10 units that Parramatta Council has. Willoughby Council has about 25. We have 72 seniors living, which we can easily put half, and then have more than double the rest of the actual Sydney-based councils assisting refugees and people that are homeless. That is what we call practicality in finding something to do. Throw them out what? Build some more up. I remember clearly, Mr Mayor, I tried to actually build more seniors living or affordable housing in our area. We even had one of the housing providers come in, apart from them being greedy and wanting to actually own the units. We're going to build more housing stock. But a lot of the councillors, especially on the northern seaboard of this table, that were actually back at the old ACC, which was Auburn City Council, said no. We're trying to fix them. I still have them on the minute. We still have, we have an issue trying to fix a problem, but we're going about it the wrong way. Yeah, let's join this. Let's join the IRA as well. Let's join this group and that group. Joining groups means nothing. We need to put some action in place. Getting people off the streets doesn't mean joining a group and saying, you know, we advocate for it. Let's get out there and do something about it instead of sitting on our fat backsides like mine and do nothing at all. Let's get out there and fix the problem, help the homeless, and then advocate to the government to keep paying the SRSS to the actual refugees, because none of these people can afford or even actually qualify for any of these affordable housing that you all keep talking about that we must have more of.
Thank you, councillor Addy. I have a move that the motion be put. All those in favour? Against? I declare. I'll run through it, councillor. This is just for the motion to be put. I declare that carried. Council, you have the amendment moved councillor Grove, seconded councillor Zeta, and then you have the motion that was moved councillor Hamid, seconded councillor Lake. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Aye. Against? No. I've had a call for a show of hands. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Councillor Addy, Councillor Zareka, Councillor Rami, Councillor Grove and Councillor Zeta. Those against? Councillor Garrard, Councillor Elmore, Councillor Wong, Councillor Lake, Councillor Saha, Councillor Hamid, Councillor Christou, Councillor Campbell and Councillor Cummings. That I will now move to the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Aye. Those against? No. I declare that carried. Call for a show of hands. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. I've got all of them, guys. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Christou, Councillor Hamid, Councillor Saha, Councillor Lake, Councillor Wong, Councillor Elmore, Councillor Garrard and Councillor Cummings. Those against? Councillor Zeta, Councillor Grove, Councillor Rami, Councillor Zareka and Councillor Addy. I declare that carried.
I now move to keep homeless people in the streets.
Council, I have 2,000. Council, next item is 215, which is the annual report. I believe, Councillor Grove, you wish to discuss this?
Mr Mayor, I believe my time starts now. We've got to
yes, that's correct. Well, are you moving the, are you moving or are you
yes, I'm moving.
You move and Councillor Zareka is seconded. Thank you. Thank you. Your time now starts, Councillor Grove.
I'm not seeing the TikTok. I don't want to run too far over. Thank you. Mr Mayor, this is a wonderful annual report and I commend it to the council and I move an extension of my time.
All those in favour of the extension of the time? I declare that lost. You wish to comment, Councillor Garrard? I believe he has, and I have a motion from him and Councillor Zareka. Councillor Garrard.
Now we got an email on this, but I just want to get it clarified. The issue around the FAG grants this year compared to last year, the amount of money, the money we never got, and the status of those circumstances at the moment.
Mr McNulty.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Garrard is right. We were dissatisfied with the amount we originally received from the FAG grant. We made a submission to the Grants Commission who provided us additional funds, but not as much as we thought we should get. Subsequent to that, there's a review of FAG grants currently being undertaken, and at the next meeting, I will be bringing a draft submission to Council to send to that review.
Does the review still reflect the fact that we're trying to recover what we never got for the last round?
I think our submission to the review will be prospective, because it'll go through all the disability factors and articulate what we think we should be getting from the FAG grants. I think we've accepted that while we've got some additional, the opportunity to get any more additional for the money for the past FAG grants is probably lost.
And in round terms, how much extra do we get?
I'll have to ask Mr Sheridan.
You want to just use the rostrum, Mr Sheridan? Might be easier. Thank you, Mr Sheridan.
The adjustment they made to the FAG was 562,000 in additional funding to bring us up in line with our pre-amalgamation position. So they brought us up to where we were prior to amalgamation.
And on this, I mean, I still don't think it's good enough, quite frankly. We're being robbed. I want to know What representations did our federal members make in this regard?
We wrote to all the members and we got about 4 representations which we forwarded on to the OLG, and we can give you a copy of some of those. I think it was Parramatta and Fairfield and the local people all responded. They're all responded in our favour.
Did we seek at all any representations to make to the Minister in this regard?
We sent a copy to the Minister of Local Government and we didn't get a response from them.
I'm not surprised.
So, Mr McNulty, what you're saying is that the review that you're talking about won't affect anything else that's happened?
We're aiming to ensure that future fair grants are fair grant compared to our disabilities.
Well, thank you, Mr Sheridan. I believe, Mr Mayor, that at the next available meeting we need, maybe that's the opportunity, but there needs to be a report to this council about what we missed out on and the injustices about all of that. I mean, we've just spent enormous time talking about inequity in terms of housing, right? And when it comes down to it, as a council, we're not being adequately financed in the first place, and then you have a system that's actually working against us. Now, I think we need a protest on this point, and I think there needs to be a recommendation to us, and maybe all of us can throw something in for what it's worth, but I don't think we can let that just go through to the Cooper. Something has to happen. I've never seen that happen before. The figures, as I understood, that were presented to us highlighted very clearly that we were robbed and that we haven't been treated with justice in terms of the representations we've made and those that have been made on our behalf. I'd like a copy of the replies that have been got from the various members, and I think we should all look forward to some comment on the floor here in regards to just what we do about this in future at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Gerard. I believe I believe it was circulated, but what we will do, I would suggest to the officers, is put it in a package so you have the whole package. And then, obviously, if we more than happy to pursue the matter. Councillor Grove?
Unless anyone else has got...
Is there any other comments? You were after your right of reply,
I would just amend my motion to indicate that a report on financial assistance grants come within the month. I'm not sure what your reporting deadlines are to do it for later in this month or first meeting of December. I would also flag my concerns around financial assistance grants. I have had a long-term view ever since I think it was the Abbott government froze financial assistance grants. And then I think a subsequent budget restored indexation, but certainly I see the trend in FAG grants as diminishing over time, in real terms at least, and I think there will be a trend from governments when dispensing, so the state government then divvies up the financial assistance grants money. They then have the responsibility to divvy it up. I can't see large merged metro councils being the beneficiaries of future distribution formulas. I suspect challenged rural countries, councils in the country with drought affectation, loans, debts, sustainability issues will continue to soak up a growing portion of that pie. And I would expect that in future budgets we see less from financial assistance grants, and we need to put that into our forward planning too, along with what Councillor Garrard did, stomp the table, place it on the agenda, but we also need to be we also need to make sure we're not dependent on it or as dependent on it as we currently are.
Take that as your right of reply, Councillor Grove. Thank you. That closes debate. So all those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Council 220, tender for evaluation report, design services for Granville Park Stadium. I believe Councillor... Oh, sorry, my mistake. I was hoping, yeah, you did. I was hoping to be a bit more ahead of schedule. So 218, Cumberland Open Space and Recreation Strategy, Councillor Lake.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The motion I'd like to move is not the recommendation in the business paper. It's the motion that's highlighted in yellow on the screen. I understand Councillor Grove is my seconder for this resolution.
Seconded, Councillor Grove. Thank you.
I don't think the draft open space and recreation strategy as it's been presented to us tonight should go on public exhibition, merely because the figures in that report, in the tables that are presented in that report, have some underlying assumptions on them that I think are not the right assumptions for calculation of our open space in the Cumberland area. The problem with the figures, Mr. Mayor, is that an approach has been taken where we've looked at our current open space and we've looked at our current population and worked out how much metres of open space we have per head of population to see how our current open space needs are, whether or not they're being met. The problem is that a lot of our open space is not just used by Cumberland local government area residents, but is also shared by the residents of our neighbouring local government areas. And for that reason, our actual level of public open space per head of population in our LGA is much lower than the report is currently showing. I think we need to take a whole new approach to the way we calculate our open space and how it is used and what our future needs for open space will be, given the increase in population in some of our areas, quite marked increase in population over the next 10 years. So I propose that we don't put this strategy out tonight, that the council staff take it away and have a review of it, put some further assumptions on the calculation of the figures and come back to us again for further discussion. I think it would be worthwhile to do that in a workshop before we brought it back in a recommendation that it go on public exhibition. I think there's some complexities in this, and I think we have to get this right, because if we don't get this right, all the planning work that we do from here on will be wrong, and we can't let that happen.
Councillor Lake. Councillor Garrard.
Mr. Mayor, the report is certainly a very meaty document, and I don't disagree with the comments that have been made. But on reading the report, you know, we've had a very large debate here about park committees earlier this year and the role that they were going to play, and everyone seemed to be on the ball in respect to that. I can't find the word park committee at all in this report. Not at all. Maybe I missed it, but I've read the document. I can't find park committees mentioned once. Can I be told I'm wrong in that respect, or why they're not mentioned?
Yeah, there's a door there. There's a door there.
About promoting healthy lifestyle.
Trying to get my
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Trying to get my steps up, I'm afraid.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to sell off a square metre of park because of that route?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may answer that question. I think Councillor Garrard is probably correct. I'm not convinced that there is a significant reference to park committees within this document. The document, as we've identified in the briefing, was to be circulated to the park committees for the comment, but we don't reference within the document any significant consultation groups for an ongoing consultation methodology on the development of our open spaces within here. It's not just park committees that are not referenced, but I don't believe they are in here in anything other than a passing reference.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Further questions, Councillor Garrard?
Yeah, no further questions, thank you, because it just supports my claim. Now, we're going down the track of place management in this organisation, and if you start, doesn't matter what strategy we're talking about, there needs to be some connection between all those aspects of our organisation and the community and place management. And if we're doing strategies on open space and recreation, we should be delving right down to the very core of our operation, which is our park committees. They are more than just reference groups. They are part of the heart of our city, and they, we've had a lot to say about the contribution that volunteer labour makes, and if you understand that, I think it then flows through to a lot of things that we decide later. It helps us manage, the care, control and management of various reserves and areas of the city can be undoubtedly assisted by the input of residents. In a document like this, I would expect that to be a very strong flavour coming through. So I'm sad to see that happening. I might add, I would be embarrassed to have that go out to park committees for them to read that and say, well, we haven't even been considered. It's too late to say, here's a document, you consider it now, because in the same fashion that old-fashioned elbow grease when they get out there and do something around these reserves and have that local ownership of those reserves, it's the same fashion, the same sort of input that you want into a document like this that is supposed to be a living document that will evolve as we go forward into the future. So I just think we got off on the wrong foot in respect to that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. I have Councillor Grove, then Councillor Zareka, and then Councillor Lake. Councillor Grove.
Yeah, I would just like to, in the interests of Greystanes Ward residents, affirm that this ward is not oversupplied when it comes to open space. You can take an arbitrary ratio of 9 square metres to one individual or whatever it was, and say relative to other areas, Greystanes is well serviced with respect to open space. I need to point out when the Lower Prospect Canal Reserve was open to the public as open space, runs from Greystanes through to Guildford, it increased the amount of open space in the former Holroyd LGA by 40%. That reserve is state heritage listed. It's not it's not public recreation. It is environmental conservation. The only bit of utility and recreation for members of the public is a concrete footpath which runs the length of that reserve. The wide open spaces that this report would suggest that Greystanes has is certainly there, but it's overstated. In the same way that you cannot bounce a basketball across a court in the Lower Prospect Canal, you can also not do that on the Ridgeline Reserve in Pemulwuy. There is a lot of mapped open space, but the only valuable asset in that space are a couple of seats and a concrete footpath. In the same way that the Duck Creek corridor has a number of sporting fields on it, but Duck River, my apologies, it's a very, very important distinction. Duck Creek's a little bit different. Nonetheless, the large strip of nature does take away from the recreational utility of that open space. I think it's important to not rely on ratios and figures, but to actually look at the population growth, and where we need to provide for the future. I also want to flag, there was a discussion of rationalisation of open space. That's not going to work. It's not going to happen. It's not a good outcome for the community. It's not a political reality that this council can achieve. You want to talk about rationalisation? The first thing residents of Cumberland will recall was the proposed rationalisation of our swimming centres. That was rejected by the public of Cumberland from one end of the LGA to the other. If we're going to talk about the expansion of our open space, when we talk about how we fund that expansion, we cannot talk about funding that expansion at the expense of other communities. It will not work.
Thank you, Councillor Sareka.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question. Can, in the next submission of this report, can they include, we're getting a lot of input from residents where they come to book one of the grounds, but it's already been booked to someone who doesn't actually live in the LGA. So I was wondering if they can include that as one of the topics, where we give priority to local residents to book and use those parks.
Mr. Govers.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Council is actually having an upcoming briefing session that's looking at our sports allocation policy, so that may address that issue there, but that's something that we can certainly look at as part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lake, you've already spoken, but...
I was just going to take on board the very significant comments from Councillor Garrard and suggest a further point that takes that comment into the resolution. So after 3, but before 4, if you want to put in a 3A, or change it to 4 and put in a 5. It should say that council officers consult council's park advisory committees in the preparation of this document.
Councillor Grove, do you accept that?
Not park advisory committee.
Thank you, Councillor Grove. I appreciate that.
Council's park advisory committees. Park advisory, in the preparation of this document. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. Right of reply, Councillor Lake.
Said enough, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lake. I will put it. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. Is brought for discussion by Councillor Zeta, so it's it was item 220, tender evaluation report.
Before
if we're council, I'll just remind you that if you're going to get into any financial details, we'd have to move into close.
That's fine.
Unless you want to move into close, I'd
before I move the
very
recommendation,
generic.
Before I do move the recommendation, I've got just one question to ask. Historically, when we've been provided with the tender documents to evaluate, we've been given a detailed summary of the selection criteria results in terms of the weighted criteria for each of the applicants. This time around, all we've been given is the actual end summary, the total number that each applicant achieved. Has there been a change in the way that in the reporting requirements for these tender papers?
Mr. McNulty.
The intention is that all our tender reports are consistent in format, so I can't explain why this one's different.
You do.
I understand your point,
correct?
yes.
We've been given normally a
Yes,
A3 size
yes,
paper
yep, yep.
showing all the
Yes.
results, because that wasn't there. So it's very simply, next time round when a tender document comes back, can we please have that? Okay. I'll move report recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second for that? Seconded, Councillor Addy. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I ask Councillor Hammond, who I know is moving this motion, was there a second for this motion? You will. Councillor Elmore, thank you. Councillor Hammond.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Ramadan, hang on, sorry, I'm just going to... In the Cumberland Council area in 2016, 47,286 residents nominated their religion as Islam. That is 22% of all people in Cumberland Council, making the Muslim community the largest faith-based group across our LGA. For Muslims, Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic lunar calendar and begins at the sighting of the crescent, lasting for 29 to 30 days. At the break of dawn on the first day of Ramadan, Muslims embark on a month-long journey of fasting, prayer, reflection and charity. For some, Ramadan is about abstaining from food and drink, self-restraint, revisiting their connection with God. For others, it is about giving to the less fortunate and strengthening and mending otherwise broken relationships. According to tradition, family and friends and neighbours gather to share communal meals eaten with family and local community. This is called iftar. I recently visited the Canterbury Bankstown Street Iftar, where every evening Ramadan night markets transform the main strip of Holden Street into a food festival. Families, people from all walks of life roam the footpaths crowded with charcoal barbecues, juice stands and food stalls. Everywhere you look, there's something happening. The hoot of fat hitting charcoal, clouds of steam rising from a large pot of sahlab, hot milk, the consistent motion of paratha dough being teased and stretched into flowing silk, bright orange batter whistled into swells in a drum of simmering oil to make jalabi. While the food excited me, I couldn't help the warm feeling on the inside when I saw Palestinian storeholders next to Lebanese, next to Indian, next to Pakistanis, next to Turks and so on. But my favourite was Dave and his humble Aussie sausage sizzle. While the food festival has been designed for Muslims observing Ramadan, it's open to everyone. And people from all faiths and cultural backgrounds reap the benefits. And that's what my motion today is all about. I also enjoyed attending Cumberland Council's iftar this year, where a select few, predominantly community leaders, by the way, many of whom are friends of mine, were invited to share iftar at the Holroyd Centre. Whilst this was indeed a good, fun, multicultural ceremony, it was on an invite basis. In other words, it was exclusive. It was exclusive to community leaders such as myself, but it excluded families, young and old people, and the wider community. It is my view that Council takes every effort to ensure that every dollar spent be of benefit to the entire community, not a select few, but everyone, that everyone gets the opportunity to reap the benefits. This includes local businesses. There are 15 restaurants and food businesses in Granville Town Centre, which I am sure will enjoy the economic benefit of such a festival. You will notice that the motion does not specify a particular street and allows for consultation with local businesses. This is because it is just as important for businesses as it is for the wider community. And yes, Mr Mayor, Granville is the best place for this. Granville has active and well-known food vendors, which enables us to attract larger crowds. Granville has a vibrant, busy nightlife. One could argue that it is the tourist destination for foodies, me being one of them. People come to Granville because it is known for its food. Mr Mayor, we need to improve the spread of events across Cumberland. We need it on the map, and Granville is halfway there. My proposal aligns with other cultural events, including Lunar New Year and Diwali. My proposal is about inclusiveness. My proposal is about bringing people together. My proposal is about local businesses. And my proposal is about embracing our diversity. And it is most certainly about the food. I hope that this chamber will support my motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. I have Councillor Christou, then Councillor Zareka, then Councillor Campbell. Councillor Christou.
Yeah. Mr Mayor, through you, I would like to ask some questions of whoever responded or wrote out the report, if I may, and then I'll lead into my, so if I can be directed to...
I believe Miss Endicott.
Ms Endicott, you have noted in your report in regards to this motion that this event has not been planned for or budgeted for, is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Council has budgeted for an iftar dinner as per last year for $15,000. So we've budgeted for an iftar dinner, which was what we budgeted for the Whole Road Centre last year.
Right. You have also noted that in order to accommodate this event, there will need to be funding cuts to other events, so this event will be delivered. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we would need to review and find money within the current events program. We have $1.48 million for our events program. Between now and the time of the delivery of the proposed event, which would be May, June next year, we have 14 events to deliver. We've already looked at a number of savings to restore or put in place other council events, so we would need to look further into making additional savings, as well as looking at income generation opportunities through this event, which is also a challenge for us in terms of finding sponsorship or stallholder fees and things like that.
Can you confirm that when I read the proposed motion in your report in regards to this matter, myself and Councillor Rami approached you inquiring what events will suffer budget cuts in order to deliver this motion in its current format?
Yes, I confirmed that both yourself and Councillor Rami did approach me and asked me a number of questions in relation to that, including how we would fund it.
Is it correct that you stated Australia Day and Pet Fest are most likely to suffer cuts to their budget in order to deliver this event?
What I would like to clarify is that I did state Pet Fest is one potential source. That's an event that we have $95,000 allocated towards. I believe that we could deliver that same event and deliver the same impact and benefit to the community for $70,000. That's based on a review of the infrastructure. So what we do is downsize some of the infrastructure, such as the dog frisbee stadium area. We would downsize that in order to achieve a cut there. But essentially we could deliver a Pet Fest event that was of quality to the community for $70,000 rather than $95,000. I also mentioned that there are a number of events, and I did mention one potential option is that we pay a large amount of money for a headline performer. So a headline performer of a major festival costs around $15,000 to $20,000, and that's for a 45-minute performance by someone that's known from a program such as X Factor, Idol, those sorts of programs. What we have found, we experienced through the Auburn Festival, that they don't necessarily attract a local audience. A potential saving could be reducing a headline performer from, say, a $20,000 performer to a local performer that would be $10,000, and we'd still deliver the event. It's not about cutting any event. We're just looking at different ways to deliver the events that we've already said to the community we would deliver.
Just to clarify, if I may jump in. So that headline performance for Australia Day, that's where you'd usually use a headline performer? We used
headline performers for Auburn Festival recently. Yeah. Australia Day we have as well. We've used headline performers not of that same scale for things like Lunar New Year. So they're all potential options. We would look at where we could best do that, and that's a potential option, but there's other ways that we'd review it as well. I do think that we would be able to seek income generating opportunities for this event, but that is limited. So what I did state is that $25,000 would be feasible from something like Pet Fest.
And Australia Day.
And
Australia Day.
It would be.
Excuse me, mindful.
I'm just stating.
I understand what you're saying, Councillor Rani.
Don't let this blow up because.
But I don't want no badgering of officers.
There's no badgering.
Okay, I'm just mindful. All right. Thank you.
Because it was stated Australia Day and Pet Fest.
Well, that's all right. Thank you, Councillor Christie.
Okay. Look, I'll state very clearly, I'm definitely very supportive for Ramadan Festival event. As a child of Greek Cypriot refugee parents myself, I've grown up respecting all multicultural backgrounds and have many Muslim friends. I believe this motion can be improved and work can be done to make everyone involved feel welcome and provide harmony to all. I believe that if some events and groups suffer funding cuts, it starts to create a breeding ground for resentment. This is not what we want, and I'm sure my Muslim brothers and sisters agree. I'd like to go on and describe a little bit about Ramadan, if I may. Ramadan is a month in which the Holy Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. Ramadan involves fasting from morning until sunset. This fast entails that no food or water be consumed. This extends to chewing gum and smoking tobacco. Ramadan is a month for Muslims to complete tasks with renewed dedication. During Ramadan, Muslims are encouraged to complete reading the full Quran. The Quran is roughly 600 pages. The Ramadan fast is one of Islam's 5 main pillars. During Ramadan, the day consists of 2 meals. The suhoor, which is the early morning breakfast meal eaten before dawn. It is vital that the suhoor consumed is healthy and nutritious, as this meal is meant to last you the whole day, often in excess of 14 hours before your dinner meal known as the iftar. Most people that are not familiar with Islamic beliefs relate the occasion of Ramadan to the fast only. The fast is not only about denying your body food and water. The fast is also about challenging oneself of refraining from swearing and arguments, losing your temper and engaging in malicious behaviour. The fast is the opportunity to demonstrate submission to God, patience and mercy with our fellow man or woman. During Ramadan, aside from the fast, extra prayers are performed nightly, otherwise known as Isha prayers. Isha prayers are meant to be the last prayers of the evening. During Ramadan, mosques are a lively place buzzing with activity. The month of Ramadan concludes with a 3-day celebration known as Eid. Eid is highlighted by a special morning prayer. The day is viewed as a spiritual graduation and Muslims dress in their best clothes and visit friends and relatives where a sense of community prevails. Given the beliefs highlighted and the teachings of what Ramadan entails, it is vitally important that we as a council plan this proposed event properly and with respect to all. We need to sit down and make an informed decision on the appropriate location, consult local businesses in the LGA and work out a way of how to fund this event without cutting from other events that have already been budgeted for. Taking these responsible actions will result in Cumberland Council hosting a fabulous, harmonious and successful Ramadan festival we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Councillor Christou. Councillor Zareka.
Mr. Mayor.
Supporting or not supporting the motion?
Good.
Sounds like you're speaking to.
Well, thank you, Councillor.
I'm not supportive of the motion in its current form. I'm very supportive of a Ramadan event. I will clarify that. That's crystal clear. I'm very supportive of a Ramadan event.
An amendment, Councillor Christie?
I will wait and see what the mood of the chamber is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christie.
I did have one more question from Ms Endicott, if I may.
Well, while you're still before Councillor Zareka. Yeah.
Ms Endicott, were you asked to do a report for Granville only, or were you asked to investigate other areas?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the notice of motion states Granville Town Centre. So
Granville. Thank you, Ms Endicott.
Councillor Zareka.
Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Christie just mentioned, I thank him very much for that treatise on Ramadan and Iftar and Eid. In relation to Councillor Hamid's motion, I very much agree with the spirit of it, but I'm opposed to its location. So the proposed location as Granville Town Centre I would prefer it, and I would also add that that she pinched my motion. I actually, I would say I sought to have it at Auburn Town Centre. At that time, I think there was a deflection that Auburn was very well serviced and that we should find another location. I would suggest in that instance that council come back to us as to a likely and suitable location. And in fact, I'll be proposing the bottom of Guildford Road, Guildford, as that suitable location. Now, if we talk about ratios and correlations and percentages.
On the eastern side of the tracks or the western side of the tracks?
Well, no, where the parking is.
The eastern side.
Yeah.
But he's leaving it over.
Yeah. No, so in essence, Mr. Mayor, I'd be proposing to amend that to say pilot the delivery of 1 or 2 nights in the Cumberland LGA, whether Guildford or Auburn, or any other suitable, subject to. But if I could just come back to that, I'll come back to that. Yeah. Ramadan street food event, so take out Granville Town Centre. Hang on, it's my motion. Just.
It's your amendment if it's not accepted.
Pilot the Cumberland LGA, open bracket. Whether, in the first instance, Guildford, Auburn, or any other suitable location in the LGA, close brackets. Yeah. As part of the council's cultural events program in 2019, and I've also taken it as an alternate initiative to the iftar dinner. Okay, and I'll talk to that in a second. I've left number 2. We need some engagement. And number 3, we need to naturally cost it. Councillor Garrard's has that fairly high on his agenda that we need to have budget for things. I've noticed the General Manager's advice down below is that the Granville Town Centre is deemed suitable. Now, on what account is it suitable? I mean, if I walk through Granville, I'll tell you straight out that's not a suitable location to have one of these night fairs or night festivals.
Before you continue, yep. Councillor Zareka, I'll get a second for that.
Sorry, yes.
Is there a second for the amendment? Councillor Zeta, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, just going back to correlations, we've got the we'll start with Diwali. And could someone tell me how much that costs, the Diwali festival? Okay, thank you. 65,000. Just remember that. We've had that played out at Wentworthville because the Indian or subcontinent peoples 24% Hindu. Sorry, my apologies. Amount to 24%. We hold the cherry blossom event in Auburn because the Chinese community there is 26.3%.
Japanese, not Chinese. So just correcting you there.
Sorry, the Asian community. Yeah.
Councillor Zareka has the floor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
The Christmas in the Park event held at Holroyd Gardens caters for Christians and has a total population of 35.4%. Granville, according to this report, says that the total number of Muslims in that ward is 24.7%. Now, if I was to hold an event in a particular locality, I'd make sure that there's patronage there. Patronage in South Granville amounts to 41.8%. So why wouldn't we hold a festival in South Granville? We don't have to know. It should be a road because, I mean, culturally speaking, this event is supposed to be surrounded by food stalls. Okay. So it would be perfectly fit for the bottom or the eastern side of Guildford, the bottom of Guildford Road, directly opposite the station. There's plenty of parking there. One side of that road can be, or both sides of the road can be utilised for the street stall and the pop-up shops. And there's no hindrance to local traffic. You can have easy detours around that whole area. So in essence, I would be proposing for, and this is strongly proposed, that it be in Guildford. If not in Guildford, then Auburn or any other location in the LGA, which is suitable to cater for the very people that we're putting on this function for. Everybody, but who actually celebrates Ramadan? It's actually the Muslims. And we've got 41%, 42%, nearly half the population there is Muslim. So, I mean, it would be, you'd be a bit wacko to have it in a section of the LGA which only has 25%.
I'm mindful that your time got cut short, Councillor, so if you want to finish up, if required. Would you like an extension? Councillor,
Yes,
Councillor
yes,
Zado,
please.
seconded Councillor Grave. All those in favour? Thank you, thank you.
Now, as to the iftar, I don't think, I mean, these events actually make money. I haven't been involved in one personally, but from the takings that you see people collect on the night, I'm sure there's vendors that would be prepared to pay for these pop-up shops. So I think we can recoup some money from the vendors. We could take a little bit away from the iftar and reduce
Council
and reduce the cost of the iftar. The iftar is almost like it's a gracious act for the community. When you invite them to your home, you're actually opening your home to them, and it's something I don't want to give up. So I'd like to have both the festival and the iftar.
Time, Councillor.
Yeah, number three, actually, the costings. Yeah, we need, otherwise...
In the Cumberland LGA, so that...
No, costing.
I'm just confirming, you're saying, just for the purpose of the chamber...
Yeah.
Just so the other councillors can hear, so just confirming with you in your amendment that the Cumberland LGA means to investigate every suburb.
Of course, yeah.
So that includes Granville.
And I take it point three, Councillor Zareka is the outlining of the funding.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, people speaking.
No, I understand that. We've stopped the clock.
So can we clarify that Cumberland LGA includes Granville? Well, it does.
Yeah.
So we're going to investigate Granville too.
We're not opposed to Granville. What we're saying is...
Investigate everyone.
All right, thank you. Councillor Zareka has the floor. Thank you. Councillor Zareka has the floor. Then I have Councillor Campbell, then Councillor Saha, Councillor Elmore, Councillor Wong and Councillor Garrard. Thank you.
The thrust of my motion is that we cater for the very people that we're putting this event for. So the highest percentage is in South Granville. That means it's either Auburn or South Granville or Guildford. I would say South Granville, not Granville. Okay, so South Granville, the South Granville ward would be my preference. Now, if council wants council staff to come back to us with advice that suggests that we could put it on at another location, I'm happy to hear about it. But I'd be pushing for the suburbs that I've put up there, Guildford, Auburn, or any other location. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Zareka. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you.
Are you speaking in favour of the motion or in favour of the amendment, or if you could please identify for me, keep me track.
I'll speak in favour of the motion.
Thank you.
And the essence of the motion is that this event be held instead of the iftar dinner. I went to the iftar dinner last year and it was very good. It was a wonderful event. But as Councillor Hamad said, it was exclusive in the sense it was by invitation only. And I think it is much better to have an event which is open to the general public, whether they're Muslim or not, by the way. I'd be happy for, I'd support it being held in Granville. I understand what Councillor Zraker was saying. Auburn, of course, is the cultural centre of Cumberland. We all know that. And most good things happen in Auburn. However, we must adopt a generous attitude here and allow other centres to have festivities taking place. So I won't claim this for Auburn. Councillor Harmon spoke about the idea behind the event is that it is open to everybody. So it's not just exclusively for Muslims, it's not just for people who have been invited, but it's to be held out in a public place where passers-by can join in. I don't think we need to get into talking about where the highest concentration of Muslims are. You need a critical mass of Muslims, obviously, in the area to kick this off, and Granville does have a critical mass of Muslims. If we do go ahead with this, we are a multicultural community. We value all the cultures which exist within our community, and to hold this as a public event open to everybody, it's all about building community harmony and sharing what each culture has to offer, and that's why I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Saha, which way are you intending to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be speaking in favour of the amendment. Listen, I was born in a Muslim country in Bangladesh, and I go and join the Ramadan festival, the street food festival at Lakemba almost every year for the last 10 years. And I not only go one day, I go a couple of days. And I enjoyed it. It's multicultural food. It also does have a couple of significant food which are not available all the time, like camel burgers.
Yeah, it's a huge hit.
And also some sort of ice cream which is not available, and jalebis and whatnot. I have mentioned in this council chamber previously to today that in Cumberland we have many faith groups, many cultures, but that's our diversity. But after all, we are one community. We all go and celebrate. So in our Diwali festival, there are Muslims, they will be coming and they will be celebrating. And I believe if we do hold this Ramadan street festival, there will be Hindus like me who will be going and joining it. So I see definitely it's good that we will not be just doing a Ramadan iftar dinner, but this Ramadan street food event or festival will be open to everyone for the whole Cumberland community. So I'm definitely in support for it. I don't believe the budget or money is the issue at all. As Ms. Endicott mentioned, we can easily have $25,000 and then $15,000 we already spent in the Ramadan iftar dinner. So that's $40,000. I understand this Ramadan street food event will probably cost us about $50,000 for one night. And there could be sponsors as well. Like I know one of the Indian bank is sponsoring our Diwali event, and a local club is also sponsoring our Diwali event. I can say our bank will be interested, and similarly other banks will be interested in sponsoring our event as well. So I don't see any great problem in securing funding to have this Ramadan street food event in Cumberland. It is great, and I'm supportive of that. But why I am supporting this amendment? Because it gives an opportunity, an option for a wider community. It gives an option for the people living in Guildford, people living in Auburn and other locations, including Granville. So what I want to see, a report from the council officers, they will bring for the suitable location where they think, you know, a successful Ramadan street food event can be delivered for the Cumberland community. And that's why I am supporting these amendments, nothing else. So
Do you
we
wanna
are
add- do you wanna
after,
add Granville in
yes, I mean, I will request, I mean, I think it comes, I think someone actually clarified it before, that when he says Cumberland LGA, it actually covers the whole area, and I believe it includes Granville as well. So in the first instances, Guildford, Auburn, Granville, or any other location, if the mover and seconder agrees to it, we can add Granville as well. But no, we're not going to argue. I think there will be. Yes, the officer will be giving us a report saying which is the suitable location, and that will be more.
That's already said that.
Sorry, have you finished, Councillor? We'll come back with the funding and the location.
Funding and location, both.
No problem. What's your position on the iftar dinner then? So we exclude that?
So we're not having iftar dinner anymore. I mentioned it clearly that I think we are going ahead in the path of organizing a Ramadan street food festival for the Cumberland community.
So that's an all-encompassing event rather than an iftar?
Yes.
All right.
Which is what we've moved initially.
That's what we've moved. That's.
Yes.
We'll add Granville, add Granville.
And Councillor Zeta, you're happy, thank you.
And to you, sorry, through to you, Mr. Mayor, and if you don't mind, can we add Granville there as well? Guildford, Auburn, Granville, or any other location?
No
please?
problem.
So can we please add Guildford, Auburn? Sorry.
Mr. Mayor.
So
Just add the suburbs then, Pendle Hill, Greystone. No,
Guildford,
seriously.
comma Auburn, comma Granville, or any other locations? I think we don't need, after we add Granville, I don't think we need or any other locations. Those three would be enough, but I'll have to.
Councillor, would you like to finish?
Oh, I think I have said enough.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to extend a sponsorship amount of $5,000 from my practice. We can't do that? Fair enough.
Thank you, Councillor Elmore. And if you could just identify which way you're speaking.
I'm speaking to the motion, and the reason I'm doing that because this council has got the ability to overcomplicate everything we do. It was such a simple notice of motion, and we've gone around and we've gone around and we've gone around and we've taken the suburbs out, we're putting them back in, and that's quite a simple notice of motion. And just speaking on the iftar dinner, and I get invited to a lot of iftar dinners, and I thank the Muslim community for sharing their special celebration of the year with me. And I was at the council iftar dinner last year, and as Councillor Hammond pointed out, you know, there was about, I don't know, how many people does a Horror Centre accommodate? About 300? 300, there was about 300 people there. But a lot of people miss out, and in this council, what we've been trying to do is get people out of their homes into the streets to celebrate together, and we learn off each other. We get all sorts of we get people from all different backgrounds come, and we share our cultures, and that way we learn from each other. And I think that's a positive thing. I also support Granville. I do that because over the years, Granville has really changed. I remember when my daughter was about 13 or 14, we're going to take her out for dinner, and you know, 20 years ago you wouldn't go to Granville, and I said, oh, we'll go to Granville. There was a really good Italian restaurant there years ago that's not no longer. And she said, and my daughter said, I'm not going to Granville. But anyway, over the years, council's put a lot of money in the Granville. They've done some work to South Street, and of course, what was noted in the annual report about about Russell Street, and how that forms a vista from the town hall down to South Street. There is a little issue with closing Russell Street for a period of time because there's a cab rank in there, and I think the cab rank would have to be probably temporarily relocated. But I certainly over the years, you know, Granville has become a place where everybody goes to eat, and I think that would be an ideal place because council will get people coming to Granville that probably don't know the iftar dinner is on, and they'll be able to enjoy the experience like the lucky people we are that live in the Cumberland LGA. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Elmore, I'm mindful of the time, so if people want to extinguish the time, we will officially run out of time. So this is the final item, but I'm still bound by the code of meeting practice, which means the meeting would have to end at 10:30.
Unless we've already started the actual item.
No. It's because we've gone past 10. We can still continue, but I'm sorry, by the code of meeting practice, we have to finish at 10:30 because you've had employees being here since 8 o'clock in the morning. So, being mindful of that, well, if you're going to extinguish more time, Councillor Hammond, well, thank you, be quick.
Saying that we can't move an extension of time.
Correct. I can't, it's against the code of meeting practice.
Because I remember a couple of weeks ago, we actually did.
We didn't go past 10:30, I can assure you of that. We went past 10 o'clock.
Let's go, Mr. Mayor.
But we didn't. Okay, thank you. Councillor Wong, I have Councillor Wong, Councillor Garrard, Councillor Lake, Councillor Rami, Councillor Christou. Councillor Wong.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to point out, previously Councillor Zareka has mentioned about the Cherry Blossom Festival, about how Cherry Blossom Festival is based in Auburn because there's a lot of Asian community in that area. I would like to correct Councillor Zareka about that because the Cherry Blossom Festival is actually for the Japanese community, but unfortunately we don't have that many Japanese community in Auburn. I think according to last census, we only have 100.
Come on, this isn't relevant.
Thank you. Okay, then, well, that demonstrates that you don't need to have a large community in a particular area to make an event successful.
Where the Botanic Gardens are?
Well, that
too. That's why it's there, mate.
Thank you. Councillor Wong has the floor, but if Councillor Wong could get to the point, and I take it you're speaking in favour of the motion.
Yes, in a sense that the General Manager's advice is that there's no major event currently held in Granville. Therefore, Granville will be a no-brainer. There's good public transport. People can get there, and if people from Auburn want to go to Granville, there's only one stop, less than 5 minutes. So I don't see why we're wasting time on this debating about the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Wong. Councillor Garrard.
Mr. Mayor, I'll support the amendment, even though Grey Staines is not mentioned in it. My belief is that we should not be having festivals that are associated with Hindus or associated with Muslims. At the end of the day, I think those communities, and I'm very proud of them across our city, all do their own celebrations. If you go past Progress Park at around that time when Ramadan is on, you will see celebrations taking place, and I don't mind that. At the end of the day, if communities want to celebrate, fine. They're doing it very well as far as I can see, and I think we're only stuffing it up. I mean, here we are arguing about, earlier tonight, we're talking about, quite frankly, I don't think that 15 grand went to the temple just because they needed the money. All due respects, the way everybody flocked out the door to see if they got home okay. We lost a quorum in here. At the end of the night, I don't think we should be pandering. You don't have to pander to people for people to be able to promote their own culture. And if the Indian community want to do their own thing, and the Lebanese Christian community, and the Lebanese Muslim community, and the 170 Japanese that are in the place, and the Chinese want to have Chinese New Year, I haven't got a problem with that. But because they do it better than anybody else. All those communities. What we need to be doing is playing it down the middle. We've got a stack of policies, a stack of strategies as an organisation that represents the total community. And we should be playing it down the middle. We can be part of it, but we shouldn't be there driving it. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think we're going a little bit too far in that regards. And well, you know, the resolution could be very well better worded than it is. And you would have got, and it would hit a lot more brownie points, I'm telling you. But it's not for this council to start going out and having a festival that promotes every ethnic entity in the city, because we are proudly multicultural and there's many of them. And as a result, we just have these debates going around in a circle without going to the people who are running them in the first place and saying, you're doing that well, pat them on the head and support them. Instead of us getting involved with money that gets, you know, spending money on, it's different to spending money on Australia Day to spending money on this. That's my opinion. It's not I'm not degrading the fact that you want to have it, but I'm saying that other people do it better. And they're doing it better in South Granville already. Every time we go past Progress Park, I don't know why they call it a soccer ground. Right? There's always a fair on it of some description, right? And the communities over there just enjoy themselves. And I think it's very good. So I don't think we should be part of the motion, and as I say, I'll take the amendment under sufferance at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Lake.
Look, very quickly, Mr Mayor, I support the original motion. Since I heard of this idea, I've always thought Granville was the appropriate place to hold it. I guess I'm talking from the perspective of people outside Cumberland. You know, a lot of my inner westy foodie mates that like to travel around, they would come to Granville. I'm not sure that they would come to Guildford. Well, they got money and they'll spend it. If there's a big food event and it's interesting, they'll turn up. And I think, you know, we want to promote Cumberland as a bit of a destination.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hammond.
We want to promote Cumberland. We want to promote it as a destination. If you want to bring people from outside the area, like the Cherry Blossom Festival does, then choose a central location that people know about. And Granville's turning up in the Good Food Guide of the Sydney Morning Herald nearly every second Tuesday. People are reading about it. This is the place to hold it. It's not going to cost a lot of money. I understand that we're looking at about 65,000 for Diwali at the moment. It's not going to cost anything like that. We're not hiring stages. We're not hiring stages or sound systems or firework things that come up from the ground. That's not happening in Ramadan, the Ramadan Street event. So it's going to be a lot cheaper than that. As Ms Endicott told us, we've got about 1.48 million on events, and about 14 of them. So, you know, it's a drop in the ocean in terms of what it's going to cost. In relation to Councillor Garrard, well, all I can say to you, Councillor, is this isn't just about the Muslim community holding an event for themselves. This is about them sharing their culture with us. And that's the community we want to promote as a council. And if we want that sort of work done, we need to support it and promote it. And it's only the sort of promotional work that our good council staff would be able to do to make it successful. So, you know, I think the idea of moving it away from Granville is a mistake. So I hope whatever happens tonight, we do come back to deciding that Granville's the best spot for it.
Thank you, Councillor Lake. Councillor Zareka.
That's right of reply?
No, the right of reply would go to Councillor Hammond because...
Okay. I've already spoken.
Yes, you have.
7 minutes.
Yep.
Fabulous.
Any more speakers? No more speakers. Councillor Hammond.
Mr Mayor, I know that I will go down on and not win with this when I say that I'm going to reject the amendment. But sometimes you just have to make those tough decisions, and you have to go down knowing that you're doing the right thing. And I'm going to vote with my conscience. I'm inclined to reject it, as I said, for a number of reasons. Guildford has a special place in my heart, Mr Mayor. Like Councillor Elmore, I went to school at Granville South High School, and I'm very proud of that. And we have mutual love for the place. we share childhood memories in Guildford. However, if we are true to what we are trying to achieve here, that is, we want the event to be a success, and for the event to be a success, we need foot traffic. Councillor Garrard said earlier that the number of people who turned up at Cherry Blossom Festival was great. That's a measure of success. Grove said that we needed to sell ourselves to the rest of Sydney. Guess what? That's what you do in Granville. This is what the event will look like. Lots and lots and lots of foot traffic in Granville. Granville's on the map. People travel all over Sydney to come to Granville because Granville has fabulous food, if for nothing else. There is a ready-made audience and an existing active nightlife in Granville, which we can leverage off. Granville is known, and therefore people from across Sydney will be more inclined to come. That's what we want. It's economically the best way forward. I would also remind the Chamber that this is a pilot. This is a trial. It will work in Granville, and if it doesn't, then we come back and we revisit it. I want to add that Granville Town Hall is an important part of our heritage, and that this would serve as a good reminder of our wonderful heritage with the Town Hall. This is not about a you versus us. It's not about Granville versus the people of Granville marginally being more in population than or the other way around than Granville, Guildford being marginally more than Granville. Can I add that Guildford is about 2 kilometres away from Granville, folks? 2 kilometres away. 2 kilometres. Mr. Mayor, my inspiration is to unite our community, to make everything accessible to everyone. It's about inclusiveness, it's about bringing people together from all walks of life, from around Sydney, to embrace our diversity, and it was certainly not my intention to have this turn into a them versus us, which is exactly what it's turned into. I acknowledge again that I will probably lose the motion to those opposite, but I prefer to go down fighting for the right thing than to accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. That closes debate. We have the motion moved Councillor Hammond, seconded Councillor Elmore, and we have the amendment moved Councillor Zareka, seconded Councillor Zeta. I will put the amendment as written on the screen. I will call for a show of hands.
The amendment, the way it's written, has already encompassed the resolution of the original motion. The amendment is really just to remove certain words in the original motion and replace them with other words.
No.
The way you've drafted that, you've drafted it as an entire motion. That's not what the amendment is.
I'm saying it's an illegitimate motion amendment, and, unless there's a call for dissension.
Together.
Well, would you call dissent? Councillor Lake?
Time?
Well, you've got 3 minutes.
Yes, I have trouble with the way this is being done, and I think it's being done like this in on a number of occasions. An amendment omits words and inserts words. That's
Okay.
what an amendment does.
I believe it's fine, so I'll put it to the chamber. All those in favour of the motion of dissent? Are those against? I declare that lost. If you want to show of hands? No? Thank you. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I have Councillor Zareka. I have Councillor Rami. I have Councillor Grove. I have Councillor Zeta. I have Councillor Garrard. I have Councillor Christou, and I have Councillor Saha. Those against? I have Councillor Elmore, I have Councillor Wong, I have Councillor Lake, I have Councillor Hammond, I have Councillor Campbell, and I have Councillor Cummings. I declare the amendment carried. The amendment now becomes the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Against? I declare that carried. Don't go anywhere, councillors. We have important business to discuss. I know we've been discussing very important businesses, but this is very, very important, so. Almost. Yes, you can go, but come back.